Let's begin with the flag salute. Please join me. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Sue.
Yes, good morning. Mr. Cannon.
Here.
Mr. DeMattei.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Woodward.
Here.
Mr. Herzog.
Here.
Mr. Sevison.
Here.
And Mr. Hauge.
Here.
Thank you.
Just like to make an early mention that I'm sitting in as chair because Commissioner Hauge is virtual with us today, and so I've been asked to step in and run the meeting. So I'm going to read a statement, COVID related, to begin. Welcome, everyone. It's important for Placer County to conduct our business to ensure essential services for our citizens. We're doing everything we can to facilitate residents staying at home and physical distancing. We encourage the public to engage in the process. With that in mind, our public comment for this meeting will be offered in person and through a remote virtual process. Citizens who wish to comment today should be prepared to comment via a Zoom platform. To join virtually online, click on the link on the Planning Commission homepage. Please make sure your microphone is muted. You may also call in using your toll-free numbers to hear the meeting at 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247. And please enter the webinar ID number 996-9684-4530. And you'll need to press *6 to mute yourself if you're calling in with those numbers. If you would like to make public comment virtually, please raise your hand with the hand icon at the bottom of the page. If you're calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand. Please be prepared to speak at the time I open public comment for the specific item you would like to address, which may include public comment for matters not on the agenda, a consent item, or a timed item. If attending in person today, we kindly request that once you have commented on your item, return to your seat or leave the hearing room from the exit-only door to accommodate for physical distancing and allow for others to provide in-person public comment. Each commenter is entitled to 3 minutes of comment time. Thank you for your patience as we work to preserve the safety and health of all meeting participants and ensure that each citizen who wishes to comment has the opportunity to do so. I think at this time, we'll go ahead and take the Planning Director's report.
Hi, good morning, Chairman and members of the Commission. E.J. Avaldi with the Planning Services Division. For my report today, I don't have anything to update you on from the Board of Supervisors. For Planning Commission upcoming agenda schedule, we do have 2 meetings in April, and we do have items on both those agendas. One to note is the housing element update. Again, that's going to be on April 8th. And then the second meeting is April 22nd. Right now, May is looking a little light, so it may allow everybody to come up for some air. Speaking of coming up for air, I'll give you a few notes on building permit activities this year over last year. So January, February of last year, we had about 821 building permit applications submitted. This year, for the same 2 months, we have about 979 building permits, and about a 16% increase over last year. And this coming month, or the month we're in right now, we're expecting about 700 building permits just for this month alone. Interesting enough, since we moved to an online submittal, in 2020, 259 of those 821 building permits were submitted online. So just about a quarter. This first 2 months of this year, 927 of the 979 permits were submitted online. So almost everybody is taking advantage of our online portal. And then planning permits, we also have seen quite an increase this year over last year. The first couple months, we're probably a little over double the permits that have been submitted. So things are extremely busy. So just want to report that out. Any questions?
I have maybe a couple questions. One is the Auburn Journal had a little article about some plans for ADA housing where, you know, somebody could build a house on their existing property. And has the county produced those plans for those houses so people can just go get the plan and build, or is that still in process?
No, I believe that those plans are available. So those were pre-prepared plans, I guess we would call them. And they are available on our online portal as well. And that what that allows folks to do, if they don't have a design already, we have, I think there's, I don't know how many designs, so I'm not going to quote a number, but I think there's several designs, and they've already had plan review by the county, so it makes it much easier for folks to get started if they want to proceed with the ADU.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear. Thank you. Then the second question is, apparently when we get into the fall period, the Planning Commission has been appointed to do some work with redistricting. Is that process, of course, I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing other than conducting public hearings, but has the process leading to that been determined, or is that still being worked on?
Yeah, I think I'll turn that over to council since they're involved with the redistricting process as well.
Yes, the board did designate the Planning Commission as the advisory redistricting commission for the county. So once the process gets moving forward a little bit more, and once we receive the census data from the federal government, which is expected, I think, in that September-October timeframe, then there will be meetings that will be set for purposes of redrawing the district maps, and those will occur in the September-October timeframe. They need to be finalized by mid-November, so this is really a process that will occur in the fall. But there are updates that are occurring, that will be occurring during this summer, and there is a potential that those deadlines could get bumped down the road a little bit as well, because it is such a short window for doing the redistricting. So if nothing changes from the current status in that September-October timeframe, there certainly will be some meetings for discussion of the redistricting and where the lines should be drawn. But it is potential that may get bumped out even further if legislative action takes place in the meantime. I think there are some things that may come forward in that July-August timeframe on the legislative front that may change those deadlines.
Okay. Will there be some original work on alternatives before the meetings, or the meetings just going to be open?
So the meetings will be open. I think the game plan at this point is to have some workshops beforehand throughout the county to find out the communities of interest and find out what the public interest is in terms of those redrawing of the lines. But we, as a county, are not allowed to draw any new maps until we receive the census data. So we're really waiting until the federal government provides that census data to the state, and then the state synthesizes it and provides it to the counties, which won't occur, I think, until September-October timeframe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
A follow-up, that was my question too, related to that. I'm already getting calls and interest about this topic. Will the MACs be presented to? They will be part of this, and then certainly the cities, because they have, a stake in this.
So this is all still a work in progress. I believe there was some direction that meetings should take place at the MAC level. I don't know yet whether there will be multiple meetings throughout the county that certain MACs will be designated to, or whether they will go to every single MAC. So I think that's still being determined. But there certainly will be an extensive amount of public outreach that will also involve the cities and towns within the county as well.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Just looking at the online folks. Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and open up public comment for any matters not on the Planning Commission agenda. Are there any questions or, okay. please state your name?
Yes, I will. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lori Lewis. I live at Wise in Gold Hill. Some of you commissioners are new. I've appeared before the commission before on the same topic. So please give me a little allowance to bring you up to date on why I come. I'm here this morning to discuss the recent released outline from the Placer County Winery and Farm Brewery permit processing. On that permit processing, you will not see any clause for density or saturation. So if I come in and I want to do a winery, I'm not told that I'm in the density where there's already 4 wineries. My concern is that the county has guessed that there could be as many as 30 wineries and breweries in the last remaining area of Placer County that's agriculture, which is my neighborhood. Wineries and breweries take an enormous amount of water to produce. And I've submitted this document before, but I'll just go over it for the new commissioners. As to water that the vintners use in their wineries, research shows that 2 to 6 gallons of water is used for every gallon of wine made. Much of that water is used for the purposes of cleaning hoses, oak barrels, fermentation tanks, and the like. My source was the Sacramento Bee, October 7, 2014. As for the farm brewery, the water consumption for making beer is 7 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of beer. The ratio can go as high as 10 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of beer. Beer is 90 to 95% water. Currently, domestic well water is being used for that purpose. This doesn't include the water used for hosting the parties, the concerts, the tasting, the weddings. That wasn't calculated in. That source is from the Growler, and it's The Thirsty Business of Beer, dated March 2nd, 2016. If you'll allow me to continue, I wanted the commissioners to know the consumption. So my area is on domestic well water. As far as I know, the county has not done any research on the aquifer if it can sustain 30 more wineries and breweries. Nor have they included the domestic well it takes for the events of 200 people. My parcel is surrounded by 4 20-acre parcels. The new winery brewery ordinance gives those 20-acre parcels owner up to 200 guests. That's 800 toilets flushing on a Saturday and Sunday. That's not even including to make the product. That's why breweries are usually put in commercially zoned areas, because they have municipalities supplying the water, not well water. So, in order for this to be an effective permit processing, density has to be on that list. It will prevent the county from any appeals from the applicant, because it's written right there. You can only have wineries and breweries every quarter of a mile, every half a mile, whatever the water will sustain. But right now, it's scary, because I've got Donna DiCello Winery on one side of me. I got Gold Hill Gardens Event Center on the other.
We understand your concern. We got it.
Well, and my neighbor just moved in on 20 acres, and he's talking about putting in a brewery.
We've got notes here written down about your concern with water use. Appreciate your comments.
Okay.
We'll see if we have a response to that. Your time's up. Thank you.
I urge the commission to include density.
So, Director Volley, so what is there a response that you might want to provide for that, or is there anything we want to provide at a later point? Should we direct this person to some support?
Yeah, so I mean, just briefly, the winery and brewery ordinance was approved several months ago. There was a full environmental impact report prepared as part of that. So I think most of those concerns that she brought up have been addressed in that environmental document. The commission would like to, dive into this further. We're happy to, respond at a later time as well.
Okay. Thank you. It'd be nice if someone could maybe reach out and share what those details are.
Yeah, as a grower myself, I was kind of skeptical on those numbers that she pulled from the Sacramento Bee for water. not probably the best resource for water resource information. So I would like better information on that if that's possible. I wish she would have stayed because I would have questions for her. But as a grower, I've been farming in this county and other counties for all my life. So those numbers kind of seem kind of skewed. Thanks.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, anyone in person here? For items not on the agenda? No, we're not there yet. Thank you, that's okay. We have an online one, though? Okay, go ahead, we'll move to online.
Go ahead. Hello, my question deals, not...
Please state your name, sir.
I'm sorry. My name is Noe Fierros. My question deals with the widening of Baseline Road from the intersection of Fittiment eastward to Foothills Boulevard. Has the county, or will the county and or the city or PCTPA be considering a taking to widen the road?
This is your time to make public comment, not to question.
Oh, sorry about that.
It may be related to a project that we do have on the agenda as well, so we may have some more opportunity for that. So if you would actually wait, we might address your question related to the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any others?
No.
Okay. With no other comment, public comment for matters not on the agenda is now closed. We'll now move to consent agenda items. Would any commissioners like to remove items from the consent agenda? I know that we have a statement with an item from staff. So you want to go ahead and do that now?
Yeah, I would like to pull off the Atwood 80 extension of time item. So if you want to move forward with the first item and take action on that, then we can come back to that item B.
Okay, so with the Atwood 80, all we're looking at with consent is the agenda minutes. So
Yes, so I believe the request is to remove item B
Right.
from the consent agenda. Then we should also open it to the public to see if they would like to remove any other items from the
Yeah.
consent agenda, namely item A.
I'm still at the commissioners. I don't-
Let me see now, when we're removing item B, we're not going to hear it today, are we?
Yes, so do we want to take up item B right now?
So I think the request is to remove it, yes, and it may be a good time to bring it up now. I believe it's being withdrawn, so there wouldn't be a vote on it. But
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'd make the motion that we approve item A.
Let me ask the public first if they'd like to
Oh, okay.
remove any consent agenda items. Anyone from the public wish to remove? The only one consent agenda item is our last agenda minutes. So any need for that?
I have a question on Atwood 80. Is it going to be discussed today or Atwood 80 project?
It will not, the other consent agenda item will not be discussed today.
The Atwood 80 project will not be discussed today. Deferral date will be given.
right, my understanding from staff is that that item's being withdrawn today, so it will not be discussed today. So their request is being withdrawn, so there isn't anything before the commission today.
Okay, so nothing, they haven't requested later on we're going to reestablish the request.
Right, at this point, they haven't requested any other date. At this point, the application is simply withdrawn, so there is nothing occurring.
Okay, okay. Continue with
I'd
the
make a
motion.
motion that we approve the agenda, last month's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call, Sue?
Yes, I have a first from Mr. Johnson, a second from Mr. Woodward. So a vote for Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with all consent agenda items addressed, we're going to move on to our first timed item, the Flicker Gate Bay Upland South Subdivision Lot 165 Subdivision Map Modification and Variance. Members from the public may now raise their hands, press star 9 if you are calling in to begin queuing in for public comment on this item, which will not begin until the item presentation is complete. Janie Balvin is Associate Planner, will be presenting this item for us.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Janie Balvin with the Planning Services Division in Tahoe City. I'm here to present the Flicker Subdivision Modification and Variance. It starts on slide 3 of the PowerPoint.
Hey, Chris.
Next slide, please.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Thank you. The project is located at 5641 Dodowa Road in Agate Bay, a neighborhood of Lake Tahoe's North Shore. It is zoned residential. Next slide. It is lot 165 of the Agate Bay Upland South subdivision. As you can see, there's a 20-foot setback on the subdivision map. This line coincides with the zoning setback of 20 feet to property line adjacent to Dodowa Road. Lot 165 is currently developed with a 2-story single-family dwelling with a small front deck and back deck. The front deck extends less than 12 feet from the front of the house over the driveway and is not currently deep enough to cover a standard length vehicle. The owner would like to expand the front deck in order to provide for covered parking at the residence. The location of the existing residence, deck, and driveway are driving the location of the proposed improvements for which the applicant is requesting approval of the subdivision modification and variance. Staff reviewed this request, finding it to be in keeping with the intent of the original subdivision and is compatible with the neighborhood. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission take the following actions, subject to the findings and conditions of approval in the staff report. Find that the project is categorically exempt from review under CEQA per sections 15303 and 15305 of the CEQA guidelines, and sections 18.36.050 and 18.36.070 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance, which are Class 3, new construction or conversion of small structures, and Class 5, minor alterations in land use limitations. And approve the subdivision map modification in the Agate Bay Upland South subdivision to allow for a 15-foot front setback where there is a required 20-foot map setback in order to construct a deck, carport, supported by the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report, and approve the variance for a 15-foot setback where there is a required 20-foot zoning setback, supported by the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. And I can stand by for any questions.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, are there other lots that have a variance on the setback in this subdivision?
Yes, around the corner on Sunset Road, a garage was approved in the front setback.
Any other questions for staff? Not seeing any right now. Okay. Let's go ahead and open up for public comment at this point. Thank you for your presentation, Jeannie. Any of the public like to speak on this item here in the audience? Anyone online? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. And we didn't have any public comments, so I don't think staff would want to respond to that. But commissioners, we'll have a discussion at this point, or we can move to a motion.
Does the applicant have anything to say?
Let me ask, would the applicant like to speak at all? Are they with us?
Yeah, this is Eric Good, the designer and the applicant, representing the owner. I think Janie pretty much covered it. I think she did a great job. Thank you. Other than that, I'm available for comment or questions if you had any.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? All right. Let me just ask the public. I can reopen since any questions from public comment, reopen that. Okay, no one online still, so we'll close that. Commissioners, discussion?
There's no feedback from any neighbors or anything like that that I'm looking at, right? Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the questions that commonly comes up in these is the length of the driveway to the street and, conflicts with snow removal. I think I saw in the staff report that that's solved in this case. So I guess, what's the distance that the driveway now or this is going to deal with in terms of getting out of the street?
I can answer. This is Fred Stam with engineering, and we're comfortable with the snow storage on the property. It's about 26 feet from the structure to the edge of pavement. This is also, it's not a face of garage like we're normally concerned with. It's a carport, so we're even more comfortable since the cars can pull in a bit further. So engineering and public works are comfortable with that distance to the structure from the street and with snow storage capabilities on the property. So no concerns there that we can see.
Okay, thank you.
We're ready for a motion when you guys feel comfortable.
I'll make the motion that we find that the project is categorically exempt from review under CEQA pursuant to sections 15303 and 15305 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and sections 18.36.050 and 18.36.070 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance, Class 3 new construction of conversion of a small structure, Class 5, minor alterations and land use limitations.
Second.
Okay, we got a first and a second. Let's do a roll call vote.
Yes, I have a first from Mr. DiMattei, a second from Mr. Johnson. So a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
And Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to approve the subdivision map modification in the Agate Bay Uplands South Lot 165 to allow for a 15-foot front setback where there is a required 20-foot map setback. Dillard Road in order to construct a deck/carport supported by the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
Second.
First and a second, roll call vote.
I have a first from Mr. DiMattei, a second from Mr. Johnson. So a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
There's a third one.
There's a third one.
Yeah, there's a third one. We
It
need that.
disappeared on me. I can't remember that much.
You're ready.
Approve the variance for a 15-foot setback where there is a required 20-foot zoning setback at Dillard Road, supported by the findings and the subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
Second.
First and second, roll call vote.
I have another first from Mr. DiMattei, a second from Mr. Johnson. So a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
So no one spoke should I still read the appeals option?
I think as a general practice, that's a good idea.
All right.
If somebody submits a written comment, they also would have a right to appeal.
Okay.
I think here there was no written comment either, but
Yeah.
probably just to be safe.
Well, let's do it. The decision of the Planning Commission may be appealed by anyone who appeared at today's hearing and provided comment, or anyone that submitted written comments on this item. An appeal must be filed within 10 days of today's date and shall be accompanied by a filing fee of $619. The next timed item is the Baseline Commercial Center General Plan Amendment, Rezone, Tentative Parcel Map, Conditional Use Permit, and Minor Boundary Line Adjustment. Members of the public may now raise their hands. Press star 9 if you are calling in to begin queuing in for public comment on this item, which will not begin until the item presentation is complete. Chris Schmidt, Supervising Planner, will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Chris Schmidt with the Planning Services Division. The project before you today is seeking a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the entitlements required for the Baseline Commercial Center project in West Placer. The applicant is Trainer Fairbrook on behalf of Kell Holdings LLC. So the project site is at the southeast corner of Walerga Road and Baseline Road in the Dry Creek Community Plan area. Close-up of the site itself, it is used as a staging and storage area for Consolidated Communications. Heavily landscaped along the frontages and some internal trees. Very little habitat on site besides some grassland and some paving. Residential to the north is in the city of Roseville, so Baseline is the county line. On the west side of Walerga Road is a portion of the Sun Valley Oaks subdivision. Sun Valley Oaks subdivision is also located south of the site, and Bianchi Estates is on the east side of Crowder Lane. So the project site is 6.8 acres. Here's a couple pictures. The top picture is looking along Baseline Road. The bottom right is at the corner of Crowder and Baseline. You can see the Consolidated Communications tower. A couple pictures internal to the site, grassland and some pine trees. And on the bottom, you can see the paving area on the west end of the site. So the land use designation in this area, city of Roseville, obviously to the north. Adjacent to the project site in unincorporated Placer County is rural low-density residential, 1 to 2.3 acre minimum. Zoning of the site is residential single-family, combining agriculture, combining minimum building site of 40,000 square feet with a planned residential development of 1 unit per acre. So that's to the south and to the west, where Sun Valley Oaks subdivision is located. And then to the east is Bianchi Estates residential agriculture, minimum building site of 2 acres. So the proposed project is a 7-building commercial center, proposing a gas station and convenience store with car wash. There's a change that the Planning Commission has been asked to consider. Instead of 16 pumps, the applicant is willing to limit the number of pumps to 12. So if that's the pleasure of the Planning Commission, we'd have to change a condition to limit or maximum 12 pumps on the site. A fast food restaurant on the east end of the site, 2,500 square feet with a drive-through. An oil change facility internal to the site, 2,500 square feet. And then 4 outbuildings, all retail, totaling 19,700 square feet. Parking, according to our zoning ordinance, 160 spaces required. The applicant is proposing 174. A few entitlements are needed. We need a general plan amendment to change the land use designation from rural low-density residential to commercial. A rezoning for residential single-family to commercial plan development, combining use permit, combining design scenic corridor. A minor boundary line adjustment to create the 6.8-acre project site. A tentative parcel map to subdivide the site into 7 lots for future subdivision. And also a conditional use permit for a shopping center in the commercial plan development zone. So to create the parcel, there are 2 parcels today, a 6-acre site and a 2-acre site. Both are owned by Consolidated Communications. The project itself the applicant would purchase 6.8 acres of the site for the project, and Consolidated Communications would keep a 1.2-acre parcel in the southeast corner where their building is located in the telecommunications tower. Here's a bird's eye view of the proposed design, a modern agricultural aesthetic. All structures would be 1-story maximum. 29 feet would be the maximum height of some decorative elements on the corners of the buildings. And just pointing out that in CPD, the maximum height is 50 feet, so we're well under what's allowed. And in the adjacent residential single-family zone, it's 36 feet. So this is even shorter than a 2-story home that's allowed in the RS zone district. The design is made up of masonry, brick, hardy board, siding, and metal panels. Project signs would include 2 monument signs at the Willarga Road, Baseline Road, and also the Baseline Road and Crowder corners, and a less decorative sign along Willarga Road at the project entrance. The project is proposing a good amount of landscaping, meets our 50% shading requirement for parking lots, setbacks. Let me go back to this. So this shows you an aerial of how the project nestles into the site and where the buildings are located in comparison to adjoining properties. So this here is the Consolidated Communications building. This is the tower. This is the Sun Valley Oaks subdivision. This is Bianchi Estates here. City of Roseville to the north, Sun Valley Oaks over here. So setbacks in the CPD zone district are set by the use permit. The smallest setback on the site is a 2-foot from the public use easement along Willarga Road. So that's for the car wash and convenience store. That same building is 47 feet setback from Baseline Road. One of the outbuildings, building number 5, is 17 feet from Baseline Road. The fast food facility is 34 feet from Baseline and 103 feet from Crowder. The building in the southeast corner is 79 feet from Consolidated Communications border. In the southern border is interesting. There's an existing 33 feet of landscaping, a berm with trees and fencing. You can see that in the picture here. This is looking at that berm in terms of the site. The applicant will not be disturbing this area, so it remains. This is the view towards the project site from the residential neighborhood to the south. Very hard to see into the project site from the adjacent residences. So the buildings along the southern border range from 78 foot setback to 113 feet, so quite a bit of distance. You have that 33 feet of existing buffer landscaping, a solid wood fence, and the applicant would add 8 feet of additional landscaping. This is a bird's eye look at that border, and just pointing out that the 2 residences on Parkwood Court have side yards to the project site, and those have a 15-foot side yard setback. Solid masonry wall would be constructed around the Consolidated Communications parcel. Dumpsters throughout the project site are decorative and fully enclosed. Habitat impacts are very minimal. Most of the site is landscaped and disturbed. The PCCP division, I guess I would call it, the PCCP folks have looked at this and said the habitat or the open area on the site has no habitat value. There is no conversion fee. They classify this as disturbed or urban. Wetland impacts are very small. There's drainage ditches you can see scattered here, 0.03 acres. And then one small wetland of 0.004 acres. So not much there today. 8 protected trees with a combined diameter breast height of 107.7 inches would be removed. Those are primarily located along the project frontages. And those include 7 interior live oaks and 1 Fremont cottonwood. So the applicant would have to mitigate for that tree loss. I know noise is a big concern with any commercial project, especially a gas station and fast food. So the primary noise sources on site would be the car wash, the vacuum station, and the drive-through facility. So an environmental noise assessment was done to compare or to look at noise levels from these three uses to the nearest adjacent residential receptors. And that shows where the noise level locations were measured from. So for proposed conditions of approval, would limit the type and intensity of the car wash dryer allowed. So since we don't have an operator, we don't know what kind of equipment they're going to be using. So we have standards in the conditions that say how loud it can be. The operation of the car wash and vacuum station is only permitted between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Once the vacuum system at the car wash facility is selected, we'll have a supplemental analysis of the noise level produced by that. Speaker board specs need to be submitted to the county for the fast food facility. And then we're also limiting truck deliveries and parking lot sweeping only between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. And with those conditions in place, the noise produced from the proposed project meets county and also City of Roseville noise standards. Proposed lighting on site would be 14-foot light standards, LED lighting. They'll have the ability to be dimmed. So the condition of approval says parking lot lighting closest to the residential properties shall be dimmed a minimum of 50% between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Gas station safety. Gas stations are one of the most regulated uses the county has. I'm not going to go through the list of safety measures, but today's gas stations are heavily monitored. Backup safety elements, leak detection, accident prevention, emergency shutoffs, etc. The traffic generated by the project is estimated at 5,988 daily trips. Point out that 45% of those are pass-by trips. So people driving by the site deciding to stop. It's not a new trip generated. They're just capturing the existing traffic on area roads. So new trips, 2,963 daily trips, including 162 in the AM peak hour and 215 in the PM peak hour. So for relevance or comparison, current traffic on Baseline Road is 14,684 cars today and 23,188 on Willerga Road. On Crowder Lane to the east, the project would generate 77 additional AM peak hour trips and 82 PM peak hour trips. And the existing volume on Crowder is 1,159 vehicles today. So vehicle miles traveled is a new metric that we use to evaluate traffic impacts in CEQA. The most likely effect of this project on regional travel is actually a VMT reduction, because we're capturing trips that people are currently taking into Antelope in the City of Roseville to meet their neighborhood shopping needs. So gas station cleaners, that type of thing. People don't have to drive as far to get these services. So a VMT reduction by this project. So if you've been new home shopping lately, a lot of the websites have walkability scores to see what a property is nearby. So can you walk to school, church, medical offices, retail, etc.? This has a walkability score of 1 out of 100. So not much nearby to walk to today. So nearby residents are basically driving to everything. Car dependent, 0 to 24. Almost all errands require a car. So I'll point out that this is the first commercial project in the Dry Creek Community Plan area. Road improvements required by this project, including adding a center median to restrict turn movements along the Baseline Road entrance to right in, right out only. The applicant will construct a right turn lane on northbound Crowder Lane, which actually improves the level of service or doesn't diminish the level of service at the Crowder Baseline intersection. Adding new curb and gutter on the east side of Willerga Road, and then a deceleration taper at the project entrance on Willerga Road. So there's a lot happening in this corner of the county. I would say the Walerga baseline intersection is the epicenter of growth, not only in West Placer, but also the city of Roseville. Northwest to the property is the Sierra Vista Specific Plan in the city of Roseville, 8,600 residential units and 4.1 million square feet of commercial space. Many of these neighborhoods are being built today. There's also Sierra West, part of the specific plan is under construction. Baseline Marketplace, kitty corner to this site, is a 745,000 square foot regional shopping center. Has not started construction yet. It includes 3 big box stores, your Targets, Costco, Home Depot, would be those type of anchors, plus a number of outbuildings. Across the street is a Play Care Learning Center and also 2 commercial space outbuildings. And of course, west of here is Placer Vineyards, where the first neighborhoods are under construction in Property 1, eventually 14,540 units and 274 acres of commercial space. So the plan area has seen pretty steady growth over the last 30 years. Between 1980 and 2010, the population has grown from 1,300 to 5,000. And then between 2010 and 2020, roughly 1,300 new residents moved into the plan area, along with 330 new homes, which represents a 20% increase in population. Today's population is estimated at 6,300 in the plan area. And once again, no retail to speak of in the plan area. So the community plan has very limited commercially zoned land. It's predominantly residential. You do see some residential or commercially zoned clusters here. So out of the 9,200 acres in the plan area, just 161 acres are zoned for commercial, and 85% of that is in the Placer Vineyard specific plan area. Of those commercially zoned sites, site number 1 is the Riego Market. It's on the Sutter County line. It's a deli and retail store. 10 and 11 are your Placer Vineyard sites, along with 9. Site 3 is, we're currently processing the application for a subdivision there. And then site number 8 is a self-storage facility at Brady and Baseline. It's currently under construction. There's a nice cluster of commercially zoned land at PFE and Watt. None of those properties are developed. And also south of the site at Walerga and PFE. A few years ago, in 2015, a rezoning of a pretty significant commercial site, 8.9 acres, was rezoned for residential, and Morgan Knolls subdivision was approved. And work on that subdivision should start this summer. So we looked at the community plan consistency. The community plan was adopted in 1990, so you have a 30-year-old document. It serves as the guiding land use document for the project. It is consistent with several key goals of the community plan. It encourages land uses that are compatible with those uses existing and planned by adjoining jurisdictions. Like I said, there's a retail north of here, and kitty corner to the site is the Baseline Marketplace project. Manage the land as a resource, not as a commodity, in order that its future use is beneficial to the community. This community does not have neighborhood retail services today. Locate urban and suburban development in areas where urban services are available. The water, sewer is available at this project site. Also consistent with key goals and policies of the land use chapter, provide adequate convenient shopping areas for the commercial needs of residents and others where major transportation corridors connect the planned area to other areas. As I pointed out, this really is Main Street and Main Street for West Placer growth. Encourage compatibility between neighborhood land uses. And I think this project does that because of the buffering and also the conditions that limit noise levels and lighting. Allow for limited neighborhood commercial areas for the convenience of surrounding residents, so as to discourage unnecessarily long trips by automobile to reduce fuel consumption and maintain high air quality. You see that through the reduction in VMT. Encourage logical expansion of the area by developing infill areas and those lands lying closest to existing developed areas before extending into outlying areas. Well, someone could argue that this is outlying, in a few years, this is going to be a center of significant suburban development. Maintain strong design control of commercial and industrial areas with strict adherence to the Placer County design guidelines, and the proposed design of the center does meet that. So there is a community design policy and also a land use policy calling for the prevention of strip commercial along Baseline Road west of Brady Lane. This would be the first commercial development along Baseline. It's not mid-block or midway between Foothills Boulevard in Roseville and Brady or Willerga. It's at the corner of Willerga and Baseline. If it was midway on the south side of Baseline, one could argue that there would be strip retail development. So as I pointed out, this is at a busy intersection. Current traffic on Baseline Road is 14,600 vehicles today. In 20 years, that's going to triple, over 46,000 vehicles per day. On Willerga Road, traffic is expected to increase from 23,000 vehicles, nearly doubling to 37,000 in 20 years. So the county did produce a mitigated negative declaration, and all impacts can be reduced to less than significant with the mitigation measures. So this project came in early last year, post-COVID, so there was no informational meeting at the MAC. So what we did is mail out to properties within 300 feet of the project site with a flyer and contact information for staff if they have any questions about what's being proposed. That 300-foot buffer mail-out prompted one phone call and 3 emails from residents, an email from the owner of the Play Care Learning Center to the north, and an email from the Sun Valley Oaks HOA Management Company asking for information. The issues raised by those calls or emails were impact on property values, community character, light pollution, traffic, water pollution, crime, noise, and impact on horses and animals being kept on the large lots to the east. Project pending signs were placed on the property last year, and anyone that contacted me was placed on a notification list to be informed of when documents or meetings were being held. So the West Placer MAC has begun starting meeting this year. So we had a MAC meeting on March 10th where we mailed postcards to 224 area property owners. That meeting was interrupted due to a power outage, so the MAC could not take action. So we reconvened a week later and did a mail out to 303 property owners. And that included properties 600 feet of the project site that really extended additional noticing into the city of Roseville. All the homeowners within Sun Valley Oaks, all the homeowners within Doyle Ranch, and then all the homeowners of Bianchi Estates. So they received notice for that second MAC meeting and also for today's hearing. So the West Placer MAC on March 16th discussed the project for a second time. Issues raised included impact on property values, neighborhood compatibility, light pollution, traffic, the adequacy of the traffic study, the impact on wells and water, crime, excessive retail space being planned in the area, the setbacks that are being proposed, sidewalk improvements, noise, the impact on horses and animals, what's perceived as excessive building height, inadequate noticing, and a desire for more meetings on the project. In the end, the MAC did recommend denial of the project with 4 no's and 1 vacant seat. With that, staff does recommend the following to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the conditions of approval found in the staff report packet. Adopt the mitigated negative declaration to mitigation monitoring program prepared for the project as set forth in attachment H of the staff report packet. Adopt a resolution to amend the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan land use diagram as shown in attachment E of the staff report. Also adopt an ordinance to rezone the Baseline Commercial Center project site from residential single family combining agriculture, combining minimum building site of 40,000 square feet, combining planned residential development of 1 unit per acre to CPD use permit DC, so commercial plan development, combining use permit, combining design scenic corridor, as shown in attachment F of the staff report packet. Also approve the baseline commercial center tentative map to create 7 parcels as shown in attachment B. Approve the conditional use permit for a retail shopping center in the CPD zoning district. Also approve a minor boundary line adjustment to create the 6.8 acre project site as shown in attachment B of the staff report packet. And all these recommendations are based on the findings found in the staff report and also subject to the 130 conditions of approval that are attached to the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, I have a question.
Great.
Yeah, Chris, there was a gentleman earlier that was asking about the baseline road from Walerga, the foothill. And since this project is going to be doing some work on that road, and some people are going to have a feeling like maybe the road is inadequate, maybe you could explain the relationship with the county and the city and what would be happening in the future with Baseline Road now?
We do have Phil Vashin from Public Works on Zoom. I will say that this project does have, there will be improvement in this frontage with a turn lane here on Baseline Road plus the median. Baseline Road is under the jurisdiction of the city of Roseville, so it is a Roseville Road. So they'll dictate widening and when that happens. I don't know if Phil wants to add anything else.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, Phil Vashin with Department of Public Works. I will also add to what Chris has said, that there is money in the city-county fee program for the future widening of Baseline Road east of Walerga from 3 to 4 lanes. And that is really contingent upon developers coming in and paying their traffic fees, getting their building permits and building. It will happen as traffic increases, and it will happen based on the city's timing as well. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I think Mr. Noah is still on the line, so I guess he's gotten his answer here. Unless he wants to ask more, he can ask it later. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? We'll go to the applicant next, but anyone?
I have a few.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris, good briefing. Thank you for that. For public record, I did go out and visit this site, and I also spent some time on the phone with both Chris, actually it was a Zoom meeting with Chris and EJ to kind of review this project ahead of time. Some of these may be for emphasis, to kind of emphasize some of the points that you made, Chris, but just a couple of things. First, there is a pathway that I think citizens in the area, residents in the area use that kind of goes along up towards Baseline. What would happen to that pathway? It may be a bike lane. It could be something for just walking. It actually goes down towards a park that I think is to the south. So what would happen to that with this project?
There's no disturbance to the existing sidewalk along Walerga Road. So that meandering sidewalk remains in place. And then we're not touching anything south of the project entrance besides adding a deceleration taper so cars can safely turn into the side and not get rear-ended.
Okay. The proposal for 12 pumps versus 16 pumps, does the staff have a position on that proposal? Is that something you would favor based on your knowledge of the project, or do you not have any views on that?
This came up from the applicant about a week ago, and we're fully in support. The applicant acknowledges that 16 pumps is big, probably the size of what you see at a Costco. That 16 number was put in the environmental document as the most aggressive or biggest size that they would ever build here. They said they can live with 12. So we're in support.
Okay.
It actually does help with traffic on Crowder and Baseline. I mean, it's marginal. I mean, you still have a gas station here. But it actually did lower the numbers for that intersection, the level of service. So it actually.
Yeah, Chris, I will add to that the 12 pumps versus the 16 pumps plus the right turn pocket, which the city asked for, did keep the level of service at Baseline and Crowder at level of service D. with the project. So it's at level of service D without the project and D with the project.
Okay. Could you comment, Chris, on the suitability of this parcel as it currently exists for residential, for an additional residential proposal, let's say? So, for example, you know, it's surrounded by it's got two major roads, really. This, if we were to put in housing in this area, would butt right up against that really legacy tower as well. So could you make any comments on the possibility of how staff would view a residential project in this parcel?
Yeah, I can give you a subjective opinion about the suitability of residential on the corner. I mean, if a developer came in and wanted to develop it, we would be looking at access. I mean, you're on two busy roads. Most likely you would get your access from Crowder. What you would see is probably just a cul-de-sac here. But it's probably doable if Consolidated Communications gave up their site. Otherwise, you're looking at maybe just a driveway here to some lots. Not a great residential corner, to be honest, especially detached. I think in all likelihood, if this stayed the same without this project, someone would maybe ask for multifamily residential here. It's a small site, 6.8 acres. To get it to pencil, you're probably looking at 10 units an acre, so 70 units, so pretty significant density, probably 3 stories. Obviously, there is residential detached to the north and also to the west. So they have in their backyard 70,000 cars going by in the future.
Right.
So
okay.
It's a tough corner for residential, to be honest.
Okay. This is a question for you, the applicant, obviously online as well, but the applicant does not currently own this property?
They do not. They have it under contract.
Okay. So if they purchase this property, they will be purchasing it as if it's commercial property, which is probably more expensive, but there's no effort here by the applicant to purchase residential property and then convert it into commercial on our backs.
Right.
Okay.
They can speak to their agreement with Consolidated Communications, but it's typically it is conditioned on receiving their entitlements, which includes a rezone. So the protection for the neighborhood, if they get the rezoning and decide they don't want to do this project, any commercial on this corner would require design review, plus also modification of the use permit. So we would have a say if, say, Walgreens came in and wanted to get rid of the gas station in a couple buildings, they would have to go through a full review with the county. So once it's changed, we do have protection for the neighbors and the county of what eventually gets built here.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
What is the closest gas station to this corner?
I believe it's on Foothills, about 2.2 miles to the west.
Okay. And by going from 16 to 12, wouldn't that make a bigger backlog if there's a 2-mile distance to the next gas station where people are going to have to sit and wait for extra 4 pumps that are not going to be put in? Has there been a study on that? I mean, because if you go to Costco now or anywhere that has a gas station, there's a line a mile long to get in. It's probably because their prices are lower, but.
Yeah, I think Costco's unique. I mean, most gas stations, you'll see 12 pumps, but most times 4 or 5 cars maximum.
And also, is there in the marketplace across the street, is there anything scheduled for a gas station there?
I believe they have in their permit, they have the ability to construct 3 gas stations along Baseline Road.
Would that include if a Costco goes in there, they get to put their...
I believe one would be tied to one of the big boxes.
And has there ever been a tentative map for residents on this property? Has anybody drawn one up?
No, we haven't had any applications for this corner.
And I forgot what I read here. Is it still zoned 1.5 acre or 2 acre parcels for residents like it is at Bianchi?
It is 40,000 square feet minimum.
So just under 1 acre.
Yep.
The hours where it said delivery and sweeping, is that 7 days a week or is that just weekdays?
It would be 7 days a week.
And is the gas station 24 hours or limited to the same amount of hours as they use for deliveries?
We haven't restricted the hours, but it could be an item of discussion if you wish.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners on Zoom here, online, for staff? Let's go to the applicant then, and let the applicant speak, if you'd like to. Come on up and share. Anything to add?
Good morning. My name is Brian Landgraf. I'm an attorney with the law firm Trainer Fairbrick. We're serving as land use counsel for the applicant, Cal Holdings project. Also joining me here today is Al Johnson of Al Johnson Consulting and Dave Berry with Eubora Engineering. On behalf of our client, our team would like to thank the Planning Commission members for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here today in person. It's been a long time since we've been out to a public meeting. And I wanted to thank county planning staff for all their help and support, especially Chris Schmidt. So just briefly, we wanted to briefly highlight a couple of the important items with respect to our project application. Then we'll have Mr. Johnson field any questions from you, the commissioners. And finally, if the commissioners are agreeable, we would like to reserve some time at the close of the public comment so that we can respond to today's commenters. Also, just a couple of quick items to note, clarify on ownership. Commissioner Woodward, to your question, our client does own the 6-acre parcel. As we were going through the process, county staff recommended that maybe we look at an additional access from Crowder. And so then we went and negotiated the purchase of the additional 0.8 acres from Consolidated Communications, which would be added to the site via boundary line adjustment. So they do own the site, and they have for some time, and they've been working through the process. And that also got to that discussion of traffic on Crowder. One of the comments you will likely hear from the public today is also why we looked at reducing the pump number, because Crowder, based on the proximity of the Crowder intersection to Baseline and Willerga, there is a lane that cars can turn into, but they have to wait. So the level of service on that turn is a level of service D or C. We wanted to make sure that any impacts from our project did not reduce that level of service. So reduction in pump counts reduced the trip generation, reduced the trip numbers, and kept that level of service the same. Okay. Other than those items, we're in agreement with the staff report and some of the comments. So the Baseline Commercial Center, as Mr. Schmidt pointed out, is the first proposed neighborhood commercial project in the entire Dry Creek Plan area. The project is designed to meet the current demands for the approximately 6,000 residents in the plan area, together with the demands of the rapidly expanding developments to the north and the west. If you look at West Roseville, West Park, Sierra Vista, and Placer Vineyards, as I said, 22,000 units coming online here in the near future. Changes to the general plan zoning are not uncommon. In fact, if you look at several of the properties, as Chris Schmidt pointed out earlier, several of the properties that were originally zoned as commercial have been changed to residential and built out as residences. So as you look at the plan area, there aren't any strong commercial opportunities. The plan does have a couple remaining sites, generally situated south near PFE, but those have stayed idle and are likely never to develop. As was pointed out earlier, the nearest gas station is approximately 2.6 miles to the east, but this is the only gas station currently proposed south of Baseline Road. So if you look at Baseline Marketplace, those are north, and if you look at trips as people coming east along Baseline will turn right into this site as opposed to turning left and going into Baseline Marketplace. Just how that's what they've looked at in the traffic study. So the property is ideally situated at the intersection of Baseline Road and Willerga Road. Over the next few years, traffic on Baseline Road is expected to triple in volume, while traffic on Willerga is expected to double. As Mr. Schmidt pointed out, the site has been utilized for industrial storage yard and pole training facility operated by Consolidated Communications for over 20 years. The communication tower, the building, Ethernet infrastructure serving Western Roseville, West Placer will remain, albeit surrounded by an 8-foot sound wall. The Placer County Conservation Plan land cover analysis designated the site as barren industrial with no habitat values, therefore there are no mitigation requirements. The biological assessment we had prepared by Madrone Ecological came to the same determination. And due to the increased growth and traffic in the area, we are not confident the site would be viable for development as single-family lots. So the point that Mr. Schmidt was making with the Placer County Conservation Plan, when that, I don't know how familiar everyone is with that, but when that was analyzed and designed, the conservation plan members actually looked at all the future development in the area and they evaluated those sites and they designated that site, saying that there were no habitat values there. So during last night's West Placer community meeting, which I was one of 1,400 people that attended via Zoom, it was an excellent presentation done by the county and the city staff. They highlighted the myriad of upcoming development and construction projects that are ongoing and planned to start in the near future. One of the major themes at that meeting, raised by the staff as well as the public, there was just a continuous question of why has no commercial development happened? What's taking so long? Where are all the commercial uses? As I alluded to earlier, there's this trend of commercial sites that had been designated 30 years ago approximately, being rezoned to residential. That even happens in some of these newer West Park community plans, Sierra Vista plans. People are already looking at taking some of that commercial use and moving it towards residential. The short answer from staff was that in the shifting commercial environment, developers are unable to obtain sufficient commitments from tenants required to move forward with the installation of costly infrastructure. This makes it extremely difficult to determine when major big box commercial centers planned in Sierra Vista, Placer Vineyards will begin construction. The current estimates that we've heard right now for baseline marketplaces, it could take 3 to 5 years to build out. Without disclosing specifics, we did want to point out that our client has received a great deal of interest from potential businesses, including national gas station operators who are eager to occupy the space as soon as possible. In addition to the gas station, we anticipate the center would provide home to small businesses such as quick service restaurant or coffee shops, hair salons, barber shops, those kind of items. So there's definitely a demand in the community for those type of services. All it would also be shortening those trips, getting people to be able to walk, bike, and other things from the surrounding community, which is more of the model of that blueprint development that is more preferred now as opposed to when the plan was drafted in 1990. As Mr. Schmidt alluded to earlier, we spent a great deal of time and effort working with staff on a site plan and conditions of approval that limit potential impacts to the residential neighbors. For example, we have extensive buffering of the intensive uses with the gas station and the proposed fast food to the north. The gas pumps are 330 feet from the residence to the south. The drive-through is 335 feet from the nearest home to the south, and it's 465 feet from the nearest home in Bianchi Estates. We're retaining the existing landscaping buffer to the south, and we've incorporated the noise study into our design and restrictions in the conditions of approval. So as was alluded to earlier as well, the direction of the intercoms or the fast food, everything's pointing away from the residences to the south, and it's going to be buffered by the very active streets to the west and to the north. Lighting, as we talked about earlier, the existing lighting is going to be updated to the county standards, including auto dimming and shielding requirements to limit any potential impacts. Did extensive traffic studies with both the county and the city, also looking overall, but also looking at Crowder Lane, trying to figure out how to limit any impacts to the existing level of service A on Crowder Lane itself. I think we're only generating approximately 150 cars. We also, based on the comments that we heard at the MAC, as far as safety concerns, county and city staff went back and looked. There's only been 3 accidents in the past 10 years of people making that left-hand turn from Crowder onto Baseline. So we've heard that it's a safety concern with the residents, and we just want to make sure that we're not making that intersection any worse by the development of our project. We can also answer any questions about the health and safety of the gas station. As Mr. Schmidt alluded to earlier, these are highly regulated at this point. There's a lot of agencies watching it. There's several layers of protection, real-time monitoring, online monitoring in place. In the event of anything happening, everything automatically shuts off, and that incident is reported to the county and to the state. So at this point, we'd like to hand things off to Mr. Johnson to address any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for, did you have more to share, or were you going to just answer questions?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
Okay.
I'm Al Johnson with Al Johnson Consulting. I represent the client, and so be happy. I've been involved for probably the last 30 years in development in the Placer County area, in particular South Placer. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. If you don't have any questions now and you'd like to take public comment, that works good too. I just ask that we reserve a little time to comment at the end, if that's okay with the commission.
Mm-hmm. Any questions for?
The center that's going across the street, there's 3 gas stations proposed for that. Do we have a location map that we can?
Oh, I don't have one, but I can give you some information on that. I worked a lot extensively on the Sierra Vista specific plan and its approvals. I also have a client that has property immediately adjacent to that center, residential property, and I work closely with the marketplace, so I can give you some updates where they are. They have it's an 80-acre plus project. It's similar in size to where the Galleria right across the street is the Best Buy Center. That's about 85 acres in site, so you can see the size and scope of that center is fairly significant. It has 750,000 square feet. So in order for that center to move forward, as was talked about, infrastructure as this new development occurs is very important, and you have to have it on time. That center, in order to move forward, according to the developer who I talked to this week, has about a $7 to $8 million expense in infrastructure in order to move that site forward. So in order to go forward, they have it on the market today. They have parcels like we do. They have to get a number of sales of big stores to be able to afford that kind of infrastructure. So that the idea that a gas station would show up on that site anytime soon is all conditioned upon the whole site developing, because even a gas station can't afford that kind of infrastructure. And they're in their master plan, like we did in ours, you tend to list the most intensive uses so that if you have less intensive uses, that works fine. So on their site, they designated 3 potential gas station sites, one with a big box store, similar to, as you mentioned, Costco, a 16 pump station, and that's a big one. And it all dependent on whether they come or not. The other 2 locations are down to the west of the plan at the intersections that they have into the center as potential sites, but they have no tenants at this point. And as Brian mentioned, they're really running in about a 3 to 5 year timeline. And the reason that that's the timeline is that they have to actually widen Fitiment, and they have to widen baseline. And that is part of the FEEP program that the Public Works Department was talking about. The city and county have a FEEP program that widens baseline all the way out beyond Placer Vineyards and actually builds 3 lighted intersections in Sutter County. So as projects phase, the city and the county get together and figure out what infrastructure they have to build. So that center has a considerable amount of infrastructure to build before they can go forward. This center has a lot less infrastructure to build and can move a lot faster. The owner or the client is anxious to begin construction on the site this year if it's approved, and would move forward immediately. They do have an active tenant that they're working with on the gas station, and that is a 12 pump site would be what they're looking to do.
So is that 12 pumps with pumps on both sides, or is that 6 pumps with pumps on both sides? Is that 12 hoses, or is that 12 stations?
Yeah, it actually works. I think there's 3 aisles, and it has 3 hours. Well, it has 12 pumps total versus 16. How they align it, I really couldn't give you an exact response to that.
So a pump could be 24 then. It could be 2 per pump instead of 1 per pump.
Yeah.
I'm talking about hoses.
Something like that. They have like different
one
brands.
on each side.
Yeah, they have a regular, a premium, and a...
No, I'm not talking about that. It all comes out of the same hose.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, is there a hose on each side? So is there 12 little pods there that have a gas station on each, a pump on, a hose on each side? I'm talking about hoses, not pumps.
Yeah.
Probably 12 pumps and 24 nozzles.
24
Yeah,
nozzles.
yeah.
So you can do 24 cars. That was my question.
Yeah.
Sorry if it was
Good,
complicated.
I'm glad Chris clarified that. So if anybody else has any questions, we'll let public comment go, and then I could come back up and clarify anything that you would like.
So I'm under the understanding that you guys already purchased the property?
Yes.
Is that what he said? So
Client
consolidated. no
has
longer
owned the
owns this
property for over 18 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cannon with a comment for Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
And a question. I mean, Al, if you don't mind, I'd like for you to like enumerate or at least explain a little bit more about, this is a project that I've been a supporter of for over 20 years. For all of those in that District 1, which is my district, with Supervisor Gore, and the partnerships we've been trying to forge with the county and the city to make the relationships between the two entities much more mutual, but also to expedite all what you just explained about those traffic lights that are proposed to go along there, and the baseline expansion, which again has been a champion project that I've enjoyed working on from my city commissions and utilities, growth management petitioning committee, where we moved the sphere of influence for the city all the way out beyond Watt to Locust. And I'd like for you to just explain a little bit about how the partnerships and cooperation between Placer County, the city of Roseville, and Sutter County, and also I believe it's the last 4 mayors that have been in concert with me on being a champion for a project just exactly like this.
So since 2005, the whole planning area of South Placer that goes out Baseline Road has been dramatically changed from what was contemplated in the Dry Creek Plan in 1990 to what exists today. In 2005, the Placer Vineyard project that was 5,200 acres, 15,000 residential units, a couple million square feet of retail, was initially approved by the county in a specific plan. It was revised in 2015. In 2010, the project crossed the street Sierra Vista, which is about, I think, close between 1,700 and 2,000 acres, 7,000 residential units, a couple million square feet of retail, have all been approved and in the planning process. As part of that effort, both the city and the county worked closely together on infrastructure planning as this building occurred. How would Baseline and all the related roads, Watt, Santucci, all of them would be affected by this new growth and new traffic. They established a working group between them. Roseville takes Baseline Road and all of its improvements out to Watt Avenue, and they administer that. The county takes from Watt Avenue all the way out to the freeway, Ryogo interchange, and the light structures there. There is a joint fee program that both agencies agreed to charge new development to pay for that infrastructure. But also, as you go forward, there were restrictions to how much development could occur before infrastructure had to be built, whether or not there was enough fee program money or not. So if Placer Vineyards was to develop out beyond Watt Avenue, they would require developers of that plan area, that project, to actually construct it and then reimburse them or give them credits for the fee program. So, for example, the first phase of Placer Vineyards is now about 3,000 units is looking to go forward. That first phase infrastructure requirement for those 3,000 units is $60 million worth of improvements the developers have to do. Their fair share of that project was probably a little less than 40. That is what they actually owe as their fair share. But they're going to be required to front that extra $20 million to get started because the county and the city have an understanding of what the demand is, and they have to be able to have these improvements, whether or not those developers cause it or not. They have to have those improvements to serve the general community out in that area. Those kinds of things, restrictions occur on all these projects. And as in this project, both sides, the city and the county, looked at the infrastructure that they both agreed to needed to be put in place as a result of this project to ensure adequate traffic flow. And that was agreed to by us to go ahead and install those things. So there was quite a bit of cooperation that occurred between the agencies to make sure that as this new growth occurred, that infrastructure was being built in a timely manner and would keep the level of service at a point that was acceptable by both of those public agencies.
Mr. Johnson, this is Commissioner Cannon. Thank you for answering that and explaining the impact and importance that that is to West Placer and all of those that live over in that segment of the city. And if you don't mind, I'd like for you to just speak a little bit more about how long or the years that we've been working with the city and the county in cooperation, and this is a huge milestone improvement for the plan, working, I believe, with SAPOG too, to make those improvements for those residents of that part of Placer, Roseville, and the commuters that are out there. So thank you for answering my questions and speak just a little bit more about that traffic improvement that's going to happen, because that was one of the key components that we did on the Growth Management and Visioning Committee, 20 years ago. Because I was the chief proponent to move the zone of influence for the city of Roseville all the way out past Watts, and to work in concert with the county on trying to make those traffic improvements, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if I was
that's fine.
laboring on there, but thank you, if you wouldn't mind just speaking on that for just 1 second.
Probably the one thing I should add is Baseline Corridor is one of the major links from Roseville, Placer County, all the way out to the freeway to the airport to Sacramento. Until the Placer Parkway is constructed in the future as a secondary access point, Baseline serves as a major route out of South Placer over to the airport in Sacramento County. So the county and the city worked together to space a limited number of lights along that corridor, and as part of the whole structure to keep traffic moving at a pace that would be acceptable and the level of service would work. So all those intersections are also designated and funded as a part of the projects that go forward. And I guess the point Sam is bringing up is that there was an agreement between the county and the city to expand the sphere of influence from Roseville, from Fitterman Road, all the way out to basically Watt Avenue. So everything north of Baseline, between Watt Avenue to back to the city of Limits, was all part of an agreement between the city and the county to let that development occur in the city. And there have been several specific plans that have been approved up there: Sierra Vista, West Park, Creekside, and then also one in the county, Regional University. So all of those are contributing. So the partnership between the city and the county, I left the city in 2003. It was started back then, has been ongoing for 20 plus years about the impacts of this development and how it would work, and the partnership between the two entities.
Mr. Johnson, one more question, and I'll stop monopolizing and bothering you with my questions, incessant questions. Would you also, if you don't mind, speak to what the impacts, environmentally, are going to be once we have removed those stop signs and signalized that entire corridor between us and Sutter County? And this is that issue we've been working on for 20 plus years. And speak to the positive aspects about the improved relationship mutually between the city of Roseville and the county of Placer, and what this will actually bring for all of us that use that corridor, including all of those from Sac County, Sutter County, the folks that come to Roseville to, enjoy what we have to offer: restaurants, entertainment, and all that kind of stuff. Shopping, if you don't mind, real fast. Then I'll be done.
Okay, good. So maybe just one other comment is that I should mention that it's not only Roseville and Placer County, but Sutter County was a partner in this. Sutter County has a big specific plan right at the Riogo interchange, Sutter Bay, and they have committed to actually taking and widening the roadway through a fee program for them as well, all the way out to the freeway. So this is a major partnership between a number of public entities. I think the key point here in this project going forward, obviously this is a neighborhood serving retail center, and its importance is that there's none out there. And there have been a number of surveys done of residents out in that area who are just very frustrated that not enough retail has occurred out there that can get them to where they can drive and get services close by their home. So this whole concept of moving forward is that greater plan, and where you might see a bottleneck right now at Fitterman, the gentleman called in, that construction on that roadway will actually begin. Half of that improvement will occur this season. There's a client of mine that's actually building half of that road. Those things are all scheduled to go forward. But this roadway was a major link that is critical to the overall infrastructure and what development occurs in South Placer, this exit out baseline. And it will be a busy traffic corridor. And for the people who live there and have lived there for a while and didn't realize that all of this occurred over time, there is certainly a dramatic change coming to Placer County in the future in this area. It is more urban all the way out beyond Watt Avenue. With that,
okay, I promised I'd be done, but now I have one more follow-up, Mr. Johnson, if you don't mind, because Commissioner Cannon again, is maybe you could also speak to the forward thinking that I'm not sure if you were the city manager at that time. I believe you were. Yes, you were, because I was on the Growth Management and Visioning Committee that moved that sphere of influence out. And that was a controversial aspect. But if you look at the improvements to traffic, all the emission, the least, rather reduced emissions, just speak for 1 second, if you don't mind, Al, about how the city of Roseville side, and I was a planning commissioner after the GMVC commission, speak to the forward movement that we did that was a little bit unusual with regard to Fittyment and expanding it at the time that we did, and why?
Well, I think in regional development, Placer County has, in all of the 6-county region, historically, and this has gone on for 20 plus years, almost 30 years probably, historically, all the residential development in the 6-county area, 35% of that, 30 to 35, has located in Placer County. So that this market is a big player in what happens in the region. And I think both agencies back when they looked at where we were going in the future was to determine if you controlled your own destiny, both the county and the city, in the sense of dealing with growth. Not everybody wants to grow big, but you have to deal with it when it comes and be able to plan it and to lay out communities that work well and create an environment that people are comfortable living in. And that is the partnership that occurred between the city and the county, and the extension of that sphere of influence and the moving forward with Placer Vineyards was to create an environment that people would want to live in, that have parks and retail shopping and jobs close by and good transportation corridors. And Placer is known for that in the region as being one of the leaders in planning. So that commitment by both the city and the county developed a plan that hopefully in the future that you will have a continued environment that is very positive for people to locate in. I think you see that in the marketplace today. There's a big demand for South Placer, for folks buying homes, and there's, even in the pandemic, at least a demand for retail in the right locations.
And thank you, Mr. Johnson, if you don't mind. Mr. Cannon again. Can you guys hear me okay? Because this is really a testament to the relationships between the city of Roseville and Placer County and all of the other partners with whom we've worked on this in concert. So, my relative would call me my youth and lack of experience and my city planning commission background and county. This is the single most biggest plan that will service those folks on that portion of the county that have to rely exactly what you just said, Mr. Johnson, which is the people that are out there that complain that there's no service, really, no services. And so this, I think, is the single biggest plan that will be the first, the catalyst that will allow for for both Placer and Roseville to baseline really improve the traffic conditions. Planning director knows this has been a passion of mine for 20 plus years. So I just want to say thank you to you and your partners and all of your hard work for bringing a project that's got this kind of a monumental scope of impact and implications and ramifications for all of those Placer County folks, Sutter County folks, Sac County folks. The only thing that I would challenge, or rather, I wouldn't say criticize, but ask, is if we could get Sac County to somehow pay for a portion of the realignments we're going to do out there on the Sutter County side, but wishful thinking. So thank you for bringing this key project forward and for answering all of my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to honor any other comments from commissioners before we open up public comment. Is there anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open up public comment. We'll start with people in the room here. You have 3 minutes.
Hey, excuse me one second. Could I take a quick break? I usually use the restroom, and I want to listen to everybody.
Yeah, sure. Before we do public comment, why don't we do, is 5 minutes? Would that be suitable?
Is that okay?
5-minute break, and then we'll come back for public comment. So I'll close out and come back. we're at 5 minutes, but we're going to wait for the rest of the people to return.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna get started again. I think our commissioner still online. Is Commissioner Hauge back? Okay, very good. I think we're all here. EJ, is he behind the wall? Okay. All right, let's get back in session here and move to public comment. Do we have a list, Kara? Okay. So reminder, 3 minutes, come up, and then if you're going to leave, please leave the exit through the exit door. Otherwise, return to your seat. So we'll start with the in-person list.
All right, I'm going to call off 3 names and just line up behind the podium. Robin Mitz, David Mitz, and Leo Roscoe.
Thank you. My name is Robin Mitz. I live at 8200 Crowder Lane, and our house is right next to the tower. And I apologize. I get very emotional about this because this is serious to us. When this project was presented to the MAC board, we were told there would be 16 gas pumps and that the car wash would be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And now they've reduced it to 12 gas pumps, and I notice they're saying that the car wash will be opened at 7 a.m. And I have a feeling that they did that because the MAC board did not vote in their favor. So this is a way for them to appease this. But the results are the same. When we bought our home, we were concerned about that area. And we did research and found out that it was zoned residential. And that helped in our decision to purchase the home. As far as traffic, I know that there's going to be 3 exits into this facility. The exits off of Willerga and Baseline will be limited, meaning that people can only make right-hand turns into that. The majority of the traffic is going to be funneled onto Crowder. Now, the city has already indicated that there will not be a stoplight at the Crowder intersection. This is going to make that intersection dangerous. People are going to get impatient, and they're going to pull out in front of people. The other issue is people are going to realize that if they turn right on Crowder and they go through our subdivision, that they will be able to come out on Willerga, missing the Baseline Willerga intersection. There's not going to be any lights at the the exit on Willerga. With the added traffic on Crowder, it's just going to be, it's not good. I mean, I didn't buy my house here to live by a commercial project. It was zoned residential, and that's how I expected it to stay. And I understand that there has to be growth. I understand that people want facilities out there. But there is commercial property in the area, and that's where this project belongs. As far as the noise and lighting, our house sits on a ½ acre next to the tower. All of the bedrooms in our house is next to, should I quit?
Yeah, can you make your last statement?
Well, I have a lot more to say, but I mean, it's going to devalue our homes. I've already contacted a real estate agent who has verified that if this project goes forward, the value of our house will go down. If this project is passed, you will force us to sell our house.
Thank you, Robin.
All right.
We'll move to David.
Hey, my name is David Mitz, my wife here. What she was trying to get across to you, we're backed right up to where this new project is going to go in. Our bedroom windows on that side of the house is right there. 6 o'clock in the morning, they're going to allow street sweepers to go through there, the garbage trucks to go through there. How would you like 6 o'clock in the morning to hear banging going on around behind your house? So the value of the property, she just said, 2 weeks ago we had Morgan Creek, a realtor from Morgan Creek spoke out at the last meeting that we had, the what MAC, you call it a MAC, and he even said the property values are going to go down. What I want to bring out real quick is that my concerns, the intersection. Okay, the gentlemen that have been up here talking, all they're doing is repeating what they've been told. They're reading it, okay? The first gentleman said the pine trees along Baseline. They're not pine trees, they're cedar trees. So that's what I'm saying. There's no feeling for what's going on over there. They're just reading the situations. The suicide lane, the gas station, right in, right out. Okay, they're going to be cutting through our residential area, okay, and just to get back through, to get back out to Waylagra, okay? There at the intersection, we call it a suicide lane. It's used to enter and exit the junction. Okay, we got what they call a Play Care Learning Center. They got Rose Cafe and Bagel. We got student enrichment, and there's 3 other places that can go right in there. And they all have to come out, either get into that suicide lane to take a turn or whatever. And I know that they're talking about doing things with Baseline, but how far in the future is that going to be? They mentioned there's only been 3 accidents and so much time at that intersection. I've lived there. I live that intersection. And one other thing I got to get across, and that is they did account, the MAC meeting, they said that that Crowder is a Class A, okay, Class A road, okay, meaning it can hold a lot more traffic than what's in there. They put that car tester, the counter, whatever, right in front of my house, which is almost 100 yards from the intersection. And they did it in August during the height of the pandemic. Traffic was minimal then. Okay, and Baseline, or I mean, Crowder is not necessarily the real problem. The problem is that intersection. When they come out of that base gas station, when they come out of the drive-through restaurant, okay, that's going to be the extra traffic right there. And also, if you do take only a right turn, you can't get across that lane. You go down, the next street is Junction. You're restricted to, you can't do a U-turn. If I have to go down there, I have to go down, turn, go into the Catholic Church parking lot to turn around and get back out. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Good morning. I'm Leo Roscoe, and we moved out there 40 years it was very agricultural then, and residential. And we live on 2 acres about a mile from this project. But I do agree, the traffic in and out is going to be a real bottleneck for this area, on that corner. And we're worried about the pollution of any leakage that comes from any of the gas pumps, also the oil change area, etc. And I believe the project probably should be along on the other side of the road where all the commercial areas are. I'd like to see this kept residential. People moved out there because it was an agricultural area. It was a place where they could raise their families, have animals, and it was really nice. It is. I think this would just degrade the area, and the people here that live around this project do not want to see that every day going on, and the noise and the pollution and the added lighting, etc. So, thank you. I'd like to reject it.
Okay. The next person is Sarah Silva and David Barry.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. Pardon the phone. That's where my notes are. That's how I operate. I'm saving the trees, you know. Anyway, I am Sarah Silva. I live at 4042 Kenwood Way. We are about 3 houses down from the projected, we'll call it the fast food restaurant. We back to Crowder. We weren't actually notified of the development because they said a certain amount of space. Well, we were just beyond that because we are in Bianchi Estates 2-acre lots, so we're bigger, so you can't necessarily do it by size, you know, if they're factoring in the smaller lots. Of course, you're going to hit more people there at Bianchi Estates. I think they sent it to 2 people, 3 people. Anyway, my biggest concern, or I think that the biggest factor we need to take into consideration, is the community plan consistency. Community design policy number 8 calls for avoiding the creation of new commercial areas along Baseline Road west of Brady in all the way to Walerga Fittyman area. I understand that Mr. Johnson said that, you know, it's right on the edge, but that's how it always starts. It's on the edge, then it starts creeping in. My husband and I moved to our property 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, to raise our 5-year-old and our 4-year-old. They're 5 and 4 now. We want to do 4-H. We want them to learn to grow their own fruits and vegetables. We want the agricultural side of things. That's why we picked there. But we also love the city of Roseville. That's where we were before this. I've actually been a part of the community for 16 years. I worked for the Roseville Chamber of Commerce. I worked with the city on various nonprofit organizations. I've known all about the Sierra Vista development. We're looking forward to the growth also. We're looking forward to the additional commercial. We thought a Safeway was coming in a long time ago by the CVS over on Baseline and Pleasant Grove. I understand things are taking long and people are getting antsy, and you know, the infrastructure needs to be in there. They've been working on that infrastructure for 16 years now, at least that I know of. And I just don't think rushing a project and trying to create something that doesn't belong there is the way to go. I have other great ideas that could go there. I think a park, a community garden, something more community related that would bring people together. My kids and I walk that loop all the time, and we have to hold hands when we go Walerga onto Baseline because people buzz up. You know, when you're going up to a light and you're turning right, you just kind of don't really slow down, you just go. And so I always hold their hands because I'm so worried somebody's going to jump that curb, and I'm worried that this is going to cut down our walkability. We moved to the country not because we wanted walkability, we wanted country living, but we do enjoy walking the streets. There are sidewalks there, and so we like utilizing those. And with the additional traffic and what is coming here, it would not be conducive. I think there's much better use for that area. I understand a change is probably going to happen, but this is just not the project for it. I think, you know, I helped put together a petition from the Sun Valley Oaks residents and our Bianchi Estates. We had right around 150 signatures. I spoke with everybody. I spent 8 hours going along talking to everybody and seeing how they felt about the project, what their thoughts were. And everybody is so against it. And the people that back right up to it on Sun Valley Oaks, like you've heard, are just very upset because it will affect values and our way of life.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you so much.
There was a David you called.
I'm David Perry. I don't have any.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the list? Okay. Online. We're going to move through those.
Tiffany, please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, it's Tiffany Stearns. I live on 3536 Norwood Lane, just down the end of Bianchi Estates. I also wasn't notified, but I know I may have not have been in the radius as the 300 and 600 meters. I do disapprove for this actual particular development. I know it's overkill for the corner. Baseline Marketplace is a great place for this. No one's going to honestly say they want to live next to a gas station and a car wash. So that's a given. I believe we need to reduce the scope of what we can put on that area. Walgreens would be great. Something low key, something with better hours. So maybe the developer can look at that. Leave the gas station. We have 3 gas stations potentially, and all within seconds of each other. Water conservation, I mean, like seriously, a car wash, we don't need that. That's not something I know people are asking for. Amenities, yes. So maybe that's something we can look at. Also, a definitely traffic issue for residents coming in and out. I travel that way, I take my kids to school that way. The impact on all the residents making that left-hand turn on Baseline is already an issue. So that's something that we really need to, understand. We're the first people that are going to be impacted for this development, so we need to have a little better understanding of who's traveling that area and who's utilizing it. Also with the potential growth that is happening with this busy corridor. I mean, every one of you said this is, a dramatic change for the area. We need to have forward thinking. The residents just need to be heard. And I really appreciate our MAC Association for understanding that these are huge and valid points. And the rezoning to commercial, I get it. But we need to just have more residents approved restrictions for this area that aren't pulling down our reasons why we bought here in the first place. Because if we want it to be around these amenities, we would have purchased in those areas. The majority of the people that want these amenities don't even live here. They're in West Park that don't even have any other amenities around them, which is why they bought there. They knew this was coming, and if they wanted to live by it, they would. So we choose to live here because of where we wanted to be, what we wanted around us, and it wasn't a gas station. So please look at the impacts, the obvious ones, traffic, future traffic, and environmental water conservation for a car wash that you don't need, and leave the gas stations to areas that don't have residents around them, and I think people would be happy. A coffee shop, limited hours, a Walgreens, something that people would actually want to go to, but it's overkill for that corner. And why can't you have access from Allegra and right in, right out? How do you get a big gas delivery truck?
Tiffany, your time has expired. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Hilton, please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I just got an unmute notification. This is Mr. Hilton, Sean Hilton.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a man. Identify as a man. I'm a local resident, lived in Dry Creek for almost 20 years. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I'm a local athletics coach. First and foremost, in this context, I'm a community member and want to say for the record that this project, if approved, would be extremely poor planning, perhaps the antithesis of great planning. Yes, the Baseline widening project likely has to happen. It is happening. It's needed for all the growth out to the west. But that is a logical leap or illogical leap to say that just because the growth's happening, this particular project is okay at the location that it's being proposed for. It would be a absolute tragedy for the local residents who are very close to it. And you've heard all the reasons why, between traffic and possible contamination and noise pollution, added activity, crime, perhaps, accidents with the added traffic, and nuisances galore. Anyway, these services that are proposed in that location with the current project, not a single person have I met in the last couple weeks since we've actually been given an opportunity for public comment, even though we've been on an interest list for this for 9 months. Not a single person I've met who lives south of Baseline in the Dry Creek region where this is proposed for wants any of these services. As another community member just mentioned, lots of people in the city of Roseville are clamoring That's a different issue. It doesn't logically make it okay to propose this project where it's being proposed for. It should be planned for with this group in a much more community and socially friendly manner. Please consider these comments, Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fierros?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Noe Fierros. I'd like to clarify something and then comment on this project. I was the one who brought up the widening of baseline at the beginning of your hearing this morning. Just to clarify, I realize the developers will pay their fair share for the improvements, but that doesn't necessarily buy you the land. My question was, will there be a taking? Will eminent domain be applied to be able to widen Baseline Road? And I'm sure if there is, I believe it should be made publicly known. And my statements on this project is the lawyer for the project mentioned that right now that area is being used for commercial storage. That may be true, but in this commercial storage area, there's very little noise coming out of it. It's not used from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and there's no lighting to interfere with the homes around the area. In all my years as a Dry Creek MAC member and a Placer County Planning Commissioner, have I seen so much opposition to a project that does not fit in this community. It's not just upset homeowners. We have people who are involved in realty, who are developers who live in this area as well, and they agree this is not a fit for the community. It was mentioned also that there's a gas station 2 miles to the east. Directly diagonal from that is another gas station, and it has a car wash. About a half mile north of that on Foothills Boulevard, there's fast food restaurants and another car wash. About a mile and a half north of that, continuing on Foothills, there is another gas station and another car wash. How many car washes do we need in the area? People are not going to be walking to a car wash. People are not going to be walking to an oil change facility. People are not going to be walking to a gas station. It's all going to be commuters from outside the area. This project is bad for the area. It does not fit. Thank you very much for listening to me.
This is Jackie Fierros, his wife. I would like my 3 minutes, if I may, please. Thank you to members of the Planning Commission for listening to our concerns. I want to point out in the Dry Creek Community Plan on page 9, it says, residents of the Dry Creek West Placer Plan area have located there because of the rural environment and attractive, tranquil atmosphere, and the demand for living space within a rural environment will continue. The people who live in this community, for the most part, have been here for in excess of 20 years. There are at least 10 homeowners here who have been here for more than 35 years. There are children riding bicycles. There are people driving golf carts in this community. This is not where we need a gas station and a fast food restaurant within a stone's throw of our backyard. We back onto Crowder Avenue. We've been here for 38 years. I absolutely oppose this project. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the MAC members who also understand our feelings.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Pei-Chun Chang. I also live in Bianchi Estates on Muirwood Lane. I've been at this location for 24 years or so. We moved out here because of the country atmosphere. I've raised all 3 of my children in this location. I disagree with the walkability score. My kids go to Wood Creek High School. They therefore have to cross Baseline Road to get to school. Now you're asking them to walk in front of a gas station, an oil change place, whatever to get to school as well. So I think this presents a hazard for our children to get to school. We are zoned rural, and we want to keep it that way. The other concern I have was with security and police. This is unincorporated Placer County, so therefore it's patrolled by the Sheriff's Department. Well, unless you guys are willing to increase Sheriff's Patrol by a very, very significant margin, the folks that are going to be, visiting the gas stations or whatever, they're going to spill out into our neighborhood, and that presents a security concern. So I also vehemently oppose this project. Thank you.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Derek Wilson. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, a couple things. I just want to reiterate. I live right off Crowder Lane. We're one of the roads that is going to be used by Crowder to circumvent trying to go left from Crowder out onto Baseline. You can't do it based on how they're going to plan this. So everybody's going to either turn right on Baseline or turn right on Crowder and then right down Clouds Hill, which is another residential street that is now going to be impacted by this traffic that no analysis was done on. The main things I want to talk about, and I'm sorry you're going to have to hear this again, but I appreciate you guys giving us the time, the walkability score. Nobody in this neighborhood is going to walk to a gas station. Nobody's going to walk to a fast food restaurant. Nobody's going to walk to a car wash. That walkability score is not relevant for what is put here. If there were actually things in there that were of interest, not just a high churn, high volume types of businesses, fast foods, gas stations, car washes, those aren't built for the community. Those are built to serve high volume pass-through traffic, and that's what this is. You've noticed nobody here has complained about the marketplace, the 745,000 square feet that's going in right across the street. Nobody's complaining about that. But putting in these types of items with all the infrastructure that goes with it in these residential backyards, in these houses that don't have streetlights. This area doesn't have streetlights because this is how this area is supposed to be. We want it like this. It's quiet, it's dark, it's nice. You can look at the sky at night and see stars. There's no light in your backyard drowning all that out. We know it's coming. Smart planning, we agree with. Planning for the sake of, or adding items just for the sake of adding items because there's space available to buy, that doesn't make sense. There's 745,000 square feet of usage across the street. We do not need all of this in our backyard. Thank you.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Amanda Steiner.
Hello, this is Amanda Steiner. I live at 4015 Clouds Hill Road, and I'll try to keep this brief because so many other people have spoken. We moved to our home about 3.5 years ago. We obviously moved to it for the low rural area. We have lived in Roseville for a while. And we enjoy the dark nights, the lack of street lights, and we're concerned about the noise pollution, the light pollution that's going to come in, the potential damage to soil and leaking into these rural properties that have animals, horses and emus and etc. I'm also very concerned about the traffic that is going to be driven into what is supposed to be low rural residential area. There is going to be, with a right turn only in and out off of Walerga, the traffic coming out of this developed area is going to come down Crowder and through my street to get back out to make a left-hand turn on Walerga. And we've already had to contemplate the Placer Christian Academy and the home development going over there. I realize it probably can't be undeveloped forever, but I just don't think, like I think Ms. Silva said, I just don't think this is the right project. I would like to see something that is not so high traffic. I mean, all of these services are high traffic. I have been to fast food and Dutch Bros and Starbucks throughout the city of Roseville where I have seen the traffic backed up into residential streets. And, you know, that is right on the corner where they've got the fast food position right on the corner. I have a daughter I have to get to school, a daughter who's going to start driving soon. I just don't think this is the right project. I would like to see something that is more walkable, more pedestrian friendly, because almost everything in Roseville you have to drive to. I would like to see something that is neighborhood friendly, that residents want to walk to, that isn't so high in noise and light pollution and has better hours for not just myself, but for my resident, my neighbor whose homes back right up to this project. I just don't think it's very considerate at all. I think a gas station could be positioned diagonally across the street where the big box developments are going to be going. It just makes more sense to me. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a super commuter. I normally, outside of the pandemic, drive 2,000 to 3,000 miles a month. And I have never thought to myself, gee, I would like to have a gas station here on the corner. There are plenty of gas stations in proximity to me in which I can fuel my car. And I just don't think this is the right project for this area at all. But I do realize that it probably will be developed at some point. I just think it needs to be something different. And I thank you for your time, and I hope you consider all of our comments. You still there, MJ? Sorry.
Mr. Mintz, you'll have 3 minutes. Please announce yourself.
Mike Mans, 3723 Kenwood Way.
We can't hear you very well.
Can you hear this very well?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, go ahead and put me delay and I'll get a better microphone.
Are you there, Mr. Mintz?
Can you hear me? I will get a better microphone. Go ahead and go on to someone else for the time being.
All right.
Can you hear this one okay? Can you hear this one okay?
Yes. Mr. Mintz, go ahead.
Here, can you hear me finally?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, Mike Mintz, 3723 Kenwood Way. Former a member of the Public Utilities Commission for the City of Roseville from 2002 to 2007. I was chairman also, and I reviewed the West Roseville plan for the City of Roseville, as well as the downtown revitalization plan, so I have some experience in this field. I was also on the Risk Oversight Committee. This is an improper plan for where it's being placed. And looking and reviewing everything about this plan, especially from the fact that he just raised the pumps from 16 to 24, there has been a constant lack of information given out to the residents. The plan has not taken into account anything inside the Bianchi Estates or any place beyond that, the impact of this plan. Noise. Because you have a gas station and a fast food restaurant, those create a lot of noise, and we have a lot of livestock, wildlife, and residents in this area that will be affected directly, as you heard from other people. The light pollution has not been addressed specifically, because light pollution will definitely affect our wildlife and our livestock, such as owls, the hawks that are in the area, and the large amount of bats that we have in this area. Water, a very important thing. They're talking about 24 pumps. You're talking about gigantic tanks below the ground. And any of those can leak at any time. And 38 of the residents just in Bianchi Estates rely upon well water for their water. And that was not taken into account. EPA even has on their website, the one thing that should not be done is gasoline and petroleum type operations going in near any place where there's well water for residents. A good example of things that haven't been taken into account is when the widening of baseline happened earlier, and the city put up a sound wall, but nothing was done on the Placer County side of that. Home values will decline. People will go down Crowder and go and take it back to Willegra or come down Mirrorwood to Blackwood to go out on baseline. Those traffic surveys were not done or even considered, especially being a traffic survey in August during the COVID shutdown. That was completely wrong to do. Let's see, I'm trying to go as fast as I can because I know we have 3 minutes. Those are the things you should consider. Just consider the fact that the MAC turned this thing down after listening to all the residents and reading all the stuff that we had put together for them about how it will impact us. Could it be a development that could be good to go on the corner commercial? Sure. Just not fast food and gasoline and petroleum like the car wash or a smog center. Things that will not harm our local neighborhoods can go in, and less noise. That can actually, those kind of things probably could go in on that corner. Although the reason the county said that it should be agricultural and residential was because that's what it is all the way around. We're not complaining about across the street where they're doing the market center. That's because it's a proper place for
Hey, Mike, your time has expired. Thank you for your comments.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Wygand, please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I agree with the previous callers 100%. My name is Mark Wygand. I live at 8843 Latigo Court, just about a mile south of this proposed development. I, too, am completely opposed to this development. I've done a lot of research, looking at the documents from the county, looking at the notices mailed to us. I think that we need to honor the existing zoning. It currently is rural, low-density residential. I think changing that to commercial is a step in the wrong direction. It was zoned that way to begin with. It doesn't work well within that specific area in terms of the services being offered. It just doesn't fit. You just have to ask yourself, is there a compelling need for a fast food restaurant? Is there a compelling need for a gas station and car wash and other businesses right there? I don't think there is. I have heard no support from any neighbors on the Bianchi side, the Sun Valley side, any side. And there was overwhelming negative feedback at the last MAC meeting that I think you need to consider. The argument about not enough retail in the area and surveys that I haven't seen, all the residents of Roseville know we have a great retail environment. Okay, it's all around us. And there will be more retail across the street as part of that massive marketplace development. It's coming, okay, even more. The comment about no services, we have plenty of services in and around the area that we can use. We have gas stations, at least 4 to 5, within a 5 to 10 minute drive. There's plenty of services. This also violates community design principle number 8. Community design principle number 8. And that was brought up earlier, and it's a clear violation. There's also plenty of commercial property in the future, in the Placer Vineyards development. Okay, there's 20 developers involved. I believe 3 have started. Over the course of 20 years, we're going to have 20 developers with plenty of opportunity to put in gas stations, unless I'm missing something here. I also think that this is completely unfair to the local residents that are directly impacted. Just south, we heard from them today. We heard from, I believe, a resident across the street. And it's unfair to the people along Clouds Hill. The Clouds Hill folks are going to be impacted once they figure out they can cut around that community and down and around and get through to Willarga. I stand in opposition to this. Thank you.
Cammie, please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Cammie Meebank. I am a Sun Valley Oaks resident. Previously, I served as the president of the Sun Valley Oaks Homeowner Association. and I've lived here for over 10 years and lived in Roseville for over 20. To reiterate and then also bring some additional points, the rezoning from rural low-density residential to urban commercial in the unincorporated really isn't a fit. It's like pushing a square peg through a round hole. I've met a lot of my neighbors over the past few weeks who have been very, very upset over this. And, to give you maybe more of an analogy, us folks who live over on the rural residential side and versus the folks who live on the urban side, it's almost like, two different political parties, if you will. And we like having our rural, low-density community, and by forcing a commercial property into our development site, into our master plan, is not something that any of us are in favor of. The proposal, as has been stated, did not adequately identify the issues and subsequently mitigate those issues. The county will eventually be required to add cement barriers for right-hand turns only. The folks coming out of Crowder eventually will only ever be able to turn right because we have the commercial center directly north of us. So, you'll be forced to put 2 left-hand turns so that folks can make left-hand turns from baseline, but the people on Crowder will only ever be able to go right. I think this will be the first flagship development coming from the west into the city of Roseville. You have the big, electronic sign there now welcoming folks into the city. Having a little gas station, and a Dairy Queen on the corner over time will be degraded. Additionally, I don't think this really speaks to a long-term master plan. I haven't heard anyone talk about that gas stations, should likely be eliminated. California is, in just over 10 years, eliminating the sale of gas-powered cars. No one has talked about, where are they going to put a charging station? So over time, this development won't necessarily support the long-term cars of the future. Lots of folks, as you know, have a more electric type car these days. And, not to mention all of the impacts to, the homeowners in the community. As mentioned, we don't have street lights out there. No one talked about adding any kind of mitigating efforts for any of us in the community. I just think it would be a real disservice to the Dry Creek and rural community out here, and we really encourage having discussions with maybe a different type of development and leave these, more urban centers on the more urban incorporated side of the city of Roseville. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Baird, please unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Baird? Mr. Baird, could you state your name for the record, please, and you'll have 3 minutes. Go on to someone else. Ms. Hilton, please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, hi, my name is Julie Hilton. I live at 3836 Muirwood Lane, and I agree with everything that everyone has said. I'm not going to reiterate everything to save time, but the developer and his lawyer have constantly said the word neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercial is not a gas station and car wash and fast food place. I am a small developer developing a 3-acre parcel over in West Park in Roseville that is considered neighborhood commercial. It is not allowed to have a gas station. It is not allowed to have a drive-through fast food restaurant. it's allowed to have neighborhood commercial entities such as a restaurant, a cafe, an orthodontist office, a salon, a spa. Those are neighborhood commercial that people can walk to and enjoy, you know, the walkability factor that you've brought up a few times as well. So just to reiterate, this is not the right place for that development. Thank you.
Okay, we only have Mr. Baird, but I could try one more time. Mr. Baird, would you like to make your public comment?
We can see he's unmuted right now. Just.
And then I have one more.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Cannon. Do we have an idea of how many more speakers we're going to be entertaining here?
I have one online. I don't know if that's...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sue.
We have one more.
Mr. Silva, please unmute your mic, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hearing all of us out today. My name is Mark Silva. I live in Bianchi Estates. I think my fellow community members have done a great job expressing the way our entire community feels about the project. I just had a few thoughts I wanted to share with you before our closing. When the 3 gas stations proposed at Baseline Marketplace were mentioned, Mr. Johnson's key argument against it was that, well, that could be 3 to 5 years. I think I speak for everyone saying that 3 to 5 years of the status quo is a pretty small sacrifice to make for not having a gas station and a fast food restaurant to stare at every single day for the rest of our lives. Another thought is we've got 2+ miles from Walerga all the way out to Watt on the south side of Baseline with no houses currently built around it that could easily be rezoned and repurposed for this exact proposal. And then my final thought, just I don't know how things are normally done on your committee. I don't know how many entitlements are normal for a given project, but to me, I'd just like you to consider that if you have to grant 5 separate entitlements for a single project, then maybe that might be an indicator that it is not the right project for the proposed spot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Maybe give Mr. Baird one more opportunity.
Mr. Baird, were you able to do something with your microphone?
Call in.
Would you like to try and call in with your cell phone?
Sorry, Mr. Baird, but we're having trouble being able to hear you. We'd like to hear what you have to say. You're our last speaker.
Yeah. Telephone.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we can. Speak up, please.
Okay. My name is Arthur Baird. I live in Bianchi Estates. I have a well here. I'm very concerned about contamination. You know, they have all sorts of safety concerns, but accidents still happen. Also, I am very concerned about traffic, which will get diverted through Bianchi Estates. We already it was built a long time ago. The roads are very narrow. 2 cars can pass on it as long as nothing is there. If a truck comes by, one of the cars has to pull over. When they put the garbage cans out in front and pick up the garbage, it'll be a very interesting situation because traffic will really be a mess. There's no parking restrictions here, so people occasionally park on the street in front of their property, with the traffic that gets diverted through, trying to miss the Crowder and Baseline intersection when it gets jammed up, will be a mess. Anyway, I'm asking, please reject the proposal, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. No more hands here.
Okay. Anyone else that didn't get a chance, wasn't on a list? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. I'd like to invite staff up to... Okay. Do the applicant first. Okay. We'll invite the applicant to come up and address any things, and then staff if anything else is needed. Thank you very much.
Representing the client. I'd be happy to address some of the questions. There were a couple things that came up that I think need to be cleared up. Number one, we were able to touch bases. The gas station is actually 6 pumps, 12 hoses, is what is the restriction that the applicant is agreeing to. Just to be clear, there was some question about how many hoses were there. So it's actually 6 pumps, 12 hoses would be the size of the gas station. Make sure that was clear. The other thing that came up a couple times in questioning is the timing of the traffic study. It was actually done prior to COVID. It was done in 2019. All the counts were done prior to any restrictions on COVID. So I just wanted to make sure the residents knew that that was the case. The level of service at Crowder intersection, the number of trips that actually come out of our project and use Crowder is limited. I think the traffic study assigned about 20% of our trips. About 100 and some trips a day, 150 trips a day come out that, and actually go out and either go right or go left. It's the center actually performs without that exit, but we agreed with the staff that it was a good thing to have multiple avenues of access because people who live south of Crowder want to use the site. That is important for them to come in. So I wanted to indicate the level of service on the road is level service A, both prior and after the project, and the level of service at the intersection with the station as modified is level service C, both now and after the project is built. Cut through traffic on Sun Valley. The traffic study looked at that, and in fact we talked to Public Works about that issue. There is no indication that anybody would go that way when they have the option of entering the center at Crowder and at Baseline and at Willegra. If you look at the route through Sun Valley, it is rather circuitous to get around and get over to Willegra on that roadway. The traffic analysis shows, one last comment. Okay. Traffic analysis shows that the VMT that we're required to use now in the state, actually trips are altered as a result of this center. That is, people that do drive farther away to get services will drive shorter distances to get to this center, along with the fact that people can walk to the center as well. And so I just wanted to point those out. The other last point is at Crowder, that left turn lane. We talked to the county and the city, the public works staffs about that. There is no attention now or in the future do they see the elimination of that left turn because there is a center turn lane there and there's a signal that actually blocks the traffic and creates opportunity for people to get in there. Is there a delay there? Yes, there is. Do you have to be careful making that turn? Of course. The traffic history there, as we mentioned, as 3 accidents in the last 10 years, none of which were serious accidents and required hospitalization, none of that. But an accident is an accident, and I think residents have the right to be concerned about how much traffic we're putting through there. The fact that we're adding the extra right turn lane, about a third of all the trips that pull up to that intersection are taking a right turn. So by putting that in, we were able to offload a lot of trips so people can make a free right at that. So that was traffic, but I think Richard had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. As far as Willegra goes, if somebody wanted to go west on Baseline or north on Fittimet, they could turn right onto Willegra, couldn't they? And avoid, if they were concerned with Crowder, they could avoid, and you got a stoplight there so they could go out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If your point is the Sun Valley residents certainly have a way to get out the Allegra and go up and use the light, for sure. They have that opportunity.
In this facility too, can they go out?
Oh, yes. They could go out Allegra. And so Allegra is, Chris, if you can kick that sign up. Allegra is a right in, right out. They cannot cross. There's a median that exists there.
Yeah, but they can turn right.
They can turn right.
Catch the stoplight and turn left and go down Baseline.
That's exactly right. They can do that.
Or they can go up to Fittima too if they want.
That's right. They can do that. Right now, there's not a U-turn at Baseline going west. There's not a U-turn. Although the spacing meets all the city standards, we have a request in and they are looking at installing a U-turn there. As when we do the median improvements, put a U-turn there for Baseline as well. And it does meet all the city standards. We had hoped to hear from them today that was okay, but we did not get back. They didn't get back to us.
Okay. Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. Let's see. A couple other things that kind of jumped out that people raised questions about. I wanted to make sure that I touched on the gas station. So one of the things we did, during the MAC meeting, we heard about this issue about being concerned about contamination from a gas station. So we reached out to your health department and asked them, with the extensive regulations that now exist on gas stations, have you had any issues whatsoever in the last 5-10 years of contamination from new stations? Not the real old ones that were built prior, but the new stations, because they require now double-walled tanks with sensors in between the tank. So the immediate, that when that sensor senses any gas, it shuts down the gas station. They also have a bunch of stuff now where on the hoses, you can't drive off with a hose and have fuel spill on the ground. Those things automatically shut off now. With all of the precautions and the regulations now, the message from the health department was they do not see new gas stations posing any kind of hazard. Now, there's a representative here from your department if you would like to talk to them directly, but that was something we looked at, and as far as making sure that we understand the folks to the east of us have groundwater, and they're concerned about that. And with the new regulations, that's virtually non-existent, but we can have them address that if you'd like. So I wanted to mention that. One person mentioned about the car wash and water use. All the car washes today are all recycled water. They don't use continual water supply. And from there, I'll just be quiet and let you ask me any questions you might have.
Has there been an EIR done on the water and how it flows underneath this property to these residences' well water? And I asked this question because I had underground tanks at one time, and it wasn't really the tanks that leaked, and they were older than me. It was a spillage from the trucks, and everything else was a problem. And it got into our well water, and we had to dig out a lot of dirt to move it. So what I'm concerned about is maybe these tanks are great, and they were good back then, but is there anything else that could possibly contaminate this water? And how does this water flow east to west, north to south? I'm sure that it probably goes from north to south into these people, and that's how they get their well water for their house. Yeah. My biggest concern is contaminating the well water. Yeah. With this project and the runoff that goes into the street or into the dirt that can contaminate their wells.
So the new regulations exist about spills on site. All drainage from commercial centers now are all pre-treated before they enter the drainage system so that you don't end up with this stuff going into the creeks and damaging. So the sites are all drained into pipe systems, and all of those are heavily regulated now with all new development that occurs. Your question is something underground now that currently exists we don't know about? I don't know that there was an initial phase 1 analysis done on this site that did not indicate there were ever anything on the site that could cause a problem. But the wells to the east, I couldn't really tell you how the underground flows. I know this site will not have a well. It uses water system, sewer system, drainage systems, and are all encapsulated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any of the commissioners online have any questions for the applicant? Okay.
Not right now.
Oh, okay. Let's bring up staff. I think we have some questions for staff.
Thank you.
Christopher, can you put up the MAC that was on here?
That one?
Slide. From the MAC meeting, there was a
Oh,
note on there. Can you put that back on there, please?
Did you want me to talk about the notification?
Yeah, not the notification. There was a slide on here that had the yes, no votes on it. Can you put that back on there? Sorry for not being so clear. Thank you. No, I'm good. Thank you for letting me read that. I have no further questions.
Chris, I have one question. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on the disconnect between ownerships. When we talked on Monday, it appeared to me that you believed that the owner of this property was in fact the communications company.
Yeah.
Have you now concluded that that is inaccurate?
That is inaccurate.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was news to me that they had actually purchased the larger piece. And they do need the minor boundary line adjustment to purchase the additional acre plus where the fast food facility is located.
Okay.
So Consolidated Communications owns the eastern portion. The applicant owns the larger western portion.
Okay, so we have a developer that 18 months ago purchased residential property and now is asking us to rezone it commercial for this project.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Christopher?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me see, there's quite a bit of comment about the fact that maybe the gas station isn't needed here. But basically, from the county planning perspective, I guess, where's the county on that?
Is there a need? So we don't do a market analysis. It's basically developers tell us what they see as the need. So your comments about, well, there's 10 gas stations nearby, that's not grounds for us to say no for number 11. Here, there's no commercial facilities in the Dry Creek Community Plan area. This would be the first commercial center, be the first gas station. The nearest gas station to this corner is over 2 miles away. So is there a need for a gas station? Yes. So people don't have to drive as far to get their gas, or they're driving by the site and stopping to get gas. So there's benefits to having something nearby, less traffic on the roads, people don't have to drive as far, they're saving time. So from a planning perspective, it's a good use for the corner.
Yeah. I would think too that the applicant would really do their own market analysis, since they're the ones that are going to make the investment.
Correct. And as the commenter said, in 20 years, gas stations may be obsolete. What happens to this? It becomes a charging station, or it gets torn down and something else gets built at the corner.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if my colleague is finished, I don't mean to interrupt him, but I had raised my hand quite some time ago. I'd like to talk to Chris and also Mr. Johnson simultaneously. What has not been mentioned here is the population growth that has happened in the West Plan. You know, a plan that I was intimately involved with as city planning commissioner several years ago, and the needs of what are those residents from the city of Roseville. I'm a little surprised that there's not anybody else from the city that can help talk about the monuments of this actual plan for those that reside out on that side of the Placer County. There have not been adequate services. This plan represents the quintessence of a wonderful new fresh start working relationship-wise between the city of Roseville and the city, or rather the county of Placer. So, I mean, I mentioned before, and perhaps Mr. Johnson can elaborate, I believe I misspoke earlier. I believe it's the last 4 mayors of the city of Roseville that have been advocating on behalf of these kinds of improvements. And we've not even gotten into a discussion about private property rights and the kinds of things, the benefits that the development community does when it comes to making those kinds of improvements. So I would like both of those, if you don't mind, Chris and Mr. Johnson, to at least speak or touch on those, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'll touch about the need for services. So Brian earlier talked about the lag between rooftops and retail. You see there's no retail development on the west side of Fittyment in the city of Roseville. There's probably 6,000 or more homes built there today and 10,000 more coming. Retail always lags behind rooftops. They don't get in front of it. They're not going to build in anticipation of a bunch of new residents coming. They're going to go there when the market is there. So in this case, we've got 6,000 residents in Dry Creek, thousands of homes to the northwest, thousands of existing homes in the city of Roseville on the north side of Baseline, 14,000 homes coming in Placer Vineyards. And this would be the first development out of the ground besides the Raley's Plaza that's coming in at Fittyment and Blue Oaks, probably 4 or 5 miles north of here. Their projects in Roseville currently under construction. So the retail is coming. The rooftops are here and lots more coming. The specific plans in both the county and Roseville all have designated sites for commercial. None of them have been built yet. So this is really this will be the first project besides the West Park project that one of the commenters is developing in the Market Center in West Park, which is a neighborhood center. She's right, there's no gas station there. Residences back up, probably I think on at least 2 sides of that site. That property is not on a busy road. Pleasant Grove is busy, but it's not at a major intersection. This is that intersection that gets a lot of traffic, and the traffic is going to double or triple here at this corner. So is it needed? I think that the developer thinks so. Just the amount of residents out here today with no nearby services, there's clearly a need. I mean, otherwise you're traveling.
Chris, could I stop you for a second, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, with your approval and deference? I live on off the intersection of Pleasant Grove and Wood Creek. So what Chris has just said is accurate. And I want to compliment the city of Roseville because I talked personally with the Public Works traffic coordinator that fixed the intersection of Baseline and, which is called Main, of course, when you get a little bit towards the east. Baseline, Riego, and Main, if we go from west to east. And they did the city of Roseville did a tremendous job in facilitating the traffic flow, and they timed the lights on Fittyment as well. So, yes, I realize, and I don't mean to put you in a pinch. That was not my intention, Chris. It was simply to accentuate the fact of the city and the county and their coordination and cooperation together to try and expedite the traffic. So we're all going to have to live with the traffic as there's expansion. That's a fact. I mean, you go back, if we talk about those gas tanks and the folks that, with all due respect, that came in from the Dry Creek community there in the county areas, they were talking about, this is my segue to a second point, about the potential for gas leaks. Mr. Johnson explained about the very exacting
on one part.
Exacting permit and responsibilities from Cal State EPA and also the United States, the federal EPA. So that doesn't concern me as much. While I respect all of those that talk about their wells, we're going to do the best to mitigate those kinds of things. Mr. Johnson also spoke to the water that is, the water that runs out of those areas is heavily restricted. So I don't really see a concern there. But I would like, Chris, if you won't mind, call your colleague, Mr. Johnson, so he might address those things as well. Please.
You want to address any of those?
Just addressing Commissioner Cannon's comments, I have a survey that was done of Placer County residents north of baseline about services needed that was done last year online. They were allowed to vote for three things. There were about 2,000 people who responded to this survey online. It was actually done by a council member in Roseville, but was online, so we were able to find it. The number one was 557 votes for food. Number two was 410 votes for a gas station. And number three was a coffee shop at about 327. They were the top three. It dropped off pretty fast. I'll provide this to the staff so they have it for your records. And then on the gas station thing, I think that's best addressed because people think that, as a consultant, I'm self-serving in my evaluation of that. But you have a health department person here that who works in that area that we interacted with who can address that issue, I think, far better than I can if you'd like to talk to them. This is from your staff.
Joey Scarborough, technical specialist with environmental health. We have no concerns with this project, with the underground storage tanks. They're going to be pristine, brand new, state-of-the-art, double-walled, like they were telling you. 60 sensors, everything shuts down if there's any type of leak or anything like that. And then to address the issue of the actual truckers, that's regulated by the transportation folks with the state, so we don't get into that. But yeah, nozzles, hoses, all that stuff's got a bunch of sensors, annual inspections, third-party inspections, even more routinely. So they're very heavily regulated. So I hope that answers your questions.
Okay, the other question was the drainage from the surface areas.
So that I would have to defer to engineering and surveying because they handle the drainage patterns of the property. We handle more of if a spill does happen, we go out there and make sure it's cleaned up properly. But in terms of the drainage patterns, I'd have to defer that to them.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I have a question regarding the fueling stations. The concern is contamination of the wells in the region, but we have, I believe, 3 potential fueling stations just across the street. And is there a difference in the drainage patterns between those 3 across the street or this one in getting into the underground water system?
Again, I'd have to defer the drainage patterns to environmental or engineering surveying, but these wells, if they're permitted and permitted through the county, they would have to have what they call an annular seal, which basically is a seal typically 25 feet deep around the casing that prevents any contamination from the surface to drain into the well. If that answers your question.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Commissioner Cannon here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
There's another point that I think that we're missing in the analysis here, because we are doing a cooperative project with the County of Placer and the City of Roseville. Mm-hmm. So perhaps Mr. Johnson could come back and speak to the Aquifer Recovery Storage Program that Roseville introduced way back, 20 years ago when I was on the Utilities Commission for the city, and how revolutionary that is. And it does relate directly because we're talking about both the West Plan and then all of the rest of Western Placer. And Mr. Johnson could also speak probably to talk about, and this is germane to the conversation, by the way, to the effects of what the city of Roseville must do for all of those folks that live out there on the west side as far as their movement of water, transportation of water, and how that will impact those residents, and how much very scrutinative, I should say, the city of Roseville has been, again, revolutionary in these projects. Mr. Johnson, if you would.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Commission.
So, as Mr. Cannon indicated, about 20 years ago, the city got involved in an aquifer storage recovery program, which is basically identified underneath the ground. There is an aquifer that water does not flow out of it. It's pretty much like a big natural tank that sits underground. The advantage of injecting water and during the winter into that aquifer was that it actually helps the groundwater table throughout the region in the general vicinity of the aquifer, and this is in the West Plant. In Roseville's system, not only do they have water that comes out of Folsom Lake that comes through the system, but it's also backed up by groundwater wells all throughout the city. So in the event there's a problem with getting water from Folsom, you could actually live off the groundwater table for a period of time until that is fixed. So the county actually in this area has natural wells that exist, like in Bianchi Estates, they were all developed on wells. There's not a water system there that serves them from the treatment plant or from PCWA. It doesn't exist. They survive off the groundwater table. So, oh, good. I talked to one of the residents there, Mike Menz, who was telling me that his actually the well had tested recently and was very good because he just bought the property. So anyway, the city, Mr. Cannon's report indicated that that was done for the purpose of kind of stabilizing the groundwater table and having a resource in the event of droughts and things like that. I think that was the question you wanted me to answer.
All right, thank you. Any other?
And thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for speaking on those points, those critically important points.
Yeah, just a reminder that, what is that? Just a reminder, we did close public comment, so we can't have any more online folks speak. I think there's been some questions about that. So continuing on, any other questions for staff?
I have a question for my colleague, Mr. Cannon. On the corner, I lived out in West Roseville for 14 years from...
Wait, it's your question for Mr. Cannon?
On the corner of where CVS is on Pleasant Grove and Fitiment, is there anything, I know there's commercial sites there, is any of that scheduled for a gas station?
Well, Commissioner Cannon speaking here. Thank you for the question. It's really not for me. It's more for Mr. Johnson, because he can speak to, yes, that to answer, there was a plan for and Mr. Johnson will clarify when he comes back. There was a plan for a Safeway on the corner right there, exactly where you're talking, opposite, would be on the northeast corner of, that would be Fitiment and Pleasant Grove. It was going to be a large Safeway with, I believe, gas stations, but I'll defer to Mr. Johnson.
So at the corner you're talking about, at Fitiment and Pleasant Grove.
Correct.
The north side, the northeast side,
correct,
is is my client, and they have not been able to secure any tenants to that site, and there is no plan for that site. Actually belongs to Intercal Realty and has for many years. You notice this cross street, there was a little kind of a townhome project built. They own both sides of that.
Yes.
On the opposite side, in the Sierra Vista specific plan, at Pleasant Grove and Fitiment, the south west corner belongs to JMC Homes, which is actually my client. And they have a small retail center there and a multifamily project there that is ultimately designed in the Sierra Vista project. They have no plans for development at this time. They just recently approved a small little coffee shack down the road at the corner of Upland and Pleasant Grove on a remnant piece. But they, in the future, they do plan to move there. That site has some restrictions on it as to the type of retail that can locate there. And it was designed to protect the site that the Hiltons were talking about, the town center site, so they were restricted in some of their uses. I think they would have to get an amendment to be able to allow a gas station on that site in the future.
But that one corner I was asking about where I thought Safeway was going to go at one time, but there wasn't enough residents from what I was told from Safeway to put one there, but it is zoned to have a gas station.
I don't know that that's the case. I can't say yes or no to that. I mean, I know that talking to the family that owns that property. I knew the status of it because of that, but I didn't go into great depth with them. They're actually the people that developed the fountains.
But Mr. Johnson, to interrupt you, I pardon myself for doing that. My commissioner colleague, yes, I know that from the time that I was serving as, I believe it was when I was chair for 2 years on the city commission planning, that was a part of that plan. But of course, we all know this is way pre-COVID. We know the economics that happened for California and the rest of the United States, and that changed a lot of the prerogatives in planning. So it was once that way, but I'm not sure as to whether it is that way right now.
Right. There are a couple of grocery stores that have just come into the west area of Roseville. There's the Nugget at Blue Oaks and Wood Creek that just opened.
Right.
There is a site plan that has been processed at Blue Oaks and Fitiment. There's a Rayleigh's grocery store in that site plan that's being processed, and I understand that site's under construction now.
Right.
So your question is, how would we get another one? It probably that would be possible when we got a lot more growth going on both sides of the street, but there are sites there for that. It's big enough for a major grocery store.
So we don't know if that is zoned for a gas station or not. That's the answer.
I can't respond to that because I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring it to the commission for discussion. And so we can discuss amongst ourselves and look forward to a motion. So we can just discuss now, or someone can make a motion.
I'll throw out some comments and maybe that'll start some others. But first of all, this was, I think, really a very good discussion. And I appreciate all the comments and questions that everyone asked, both on the, virtually and here. And I also very much appreciate the residents that came forward and the, the consultants and the legal and everybody else. So thank you for that. I'll just tell you where I am right now, but I confess that, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well if you have some that you want to share publicly. This parcel was purchased as a residential parcel 18 months ago. So while I personally believe that logically this might be a very suitable parcel to convert to a commercial purpose at some point, it is incumbent upon, in my view, the current owner of that parcel to bring forward a proposal that is suitable to this group and for the community as well. And I personally don't think that has been done. It is, I think, important to remember that the MAC voted 4-0 to disapprove this particular proposal. It is widely, at least it appears anyway, not supported by the residents in the area. And at least at this point in time, I don't see a compelling need to the county, to the region, for a car wash, a fast food restaurant, and a gas station. I think there are suitable services that meet those needs locally. I would consider 2.5 miles locally. So that's where I am right now.
EJ, as it's zoned right now, they could put, what, with my calculations, about 7 lots on that property for residents?
That's about right, 40,000 square foot lots.
So just under an acre, so it'd be pretty equivalent to Bianchi, so it would kind of just mirror what's going on down that road. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Cannon, or rather a comment.
Yeah.
With all due respect to my last two speakers on my commissioner colleagues, what we're again neglecting here is the private property rights advocates. I mean, those issues, we're not discussing those. And if we were to do a survey, I mean, we could consult with Mr. Johnson in the city of Roseville. Those folks that all live out there in that West Plan and the Sierra Plan that Mr. Johnson talked about, I approved, on the City Planning Commission. They had the expectation when they moved that community, that there would be those services. So we've got two issues here muddling. City of Roseville, County of Placer. Three, private property rights of the developers. So let's not forget what the development community and the kind of money that they invest in infrastructure that goes to benefit all of us, Roseville City people, Placer County people, Sutter County people, Sac County people, whoever comes through that area. So, to the resident that spoke articulately earlier about, driving that commute. I mean, I did that commute for 21 years until I retired from the state legislature. So I have been, working with former Congressman John Doolittle on, in concert with the city of Roseville, the county of Placer, and all of those things. EJ can testify to that. And meeting with these people personally to try and make these kind of improvements that are going to help and benefit the preponderance of South Placer and everyone else that comes through that area, that roadway. And I believe that we've got enough on the federal and the state as far as protections, laws, by the way, as far as protections, as far as any leakage, groundwater, seepage, all those kinds of things. So the reason that I asked Mr. Johnson to come and talk is to complement the forward thinking that the city of Roseville is doing that's going to benefit that aquifer recovery storage area is huge. It's like a lake, as he said. And, when I was chair of the Utilities Commission, that's when we were moving forward of that, for that in the city of Roseville. And we approved, on the other two commissions that I did, planning and GMVC, growth management and visioning, we approved all of those expansions and everything else out there. So at the time that we did that, from the city's perspective, and also from the county's, but I was in a city role at that time, is we were planning and anticipating for that growth, but that was the thing that Mr. Johnson didn't highlight enough about the need for those services that are out there. So I think this is an absolutely, it's the quintessence of an excellent project. It's a cooperative one with Placer County and the city of Roseville. And those were the kinds of projects that I promised to champion 21 years ago when I started on these various volunteer commissions. So I want to bring it back to that. And I'd like for my commissioner colleagues to at least consider it from that perspective, if Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Other comments?
And thanks, Mr. Cannon. And I do respect the private property ownership, as we have owned a lot of property in California and have had it eminent domained by the state or by a city. So really, private property, I think, is out of the question here. You guys, they bought the property knowing that it's zoned residential and came to try to change it. We don't always get the same chance when the state comes in and takes our property. And we've lost a lot of property to that. So my biggest concern is this was bought as residential, and now you guys are asking to change it. Maybe it should have came to us before that. But I'm also concerned about the residents who live there. There's a huge impact on there as well. So those are my feelings, my comments.
Any commissioners, any other, Commissioner Hauge or Sivison, you guys have any comments?
Actually, would like to ask Chris, he mentioned that there, in this region, were commercial properties that were converted to residential. I was just wondering the acreage difference, because over 30 years, things shift and plans change to address that shift. So I was just wondering if Chris could give us an idea of the number of acres of commercial that have been converted back into residential.
Very good question. Commissioner, let me go to there's a table in the staff report that has the acreages of all the sites. Let's find what page it's on. So on page 20, the staff report lists the 11 commercial sites in the plan area totaling 161 acres. The one existing site, the mini mart near the city county line is 0.12 acres. Parcel number 2 is 4 acres. Parcel number 3, 5 acres with a housing development proposed for that site. Parcel number 4 is 0.67 acres. So those are relatively small, 1.9 acres for parcel 5. So those are all at the corner of PFE and Watt. Site number 6 is 8.2 acres. That's in the southeast corner of the Riolo Vineyard specific plan area. Kitty corner to that is a 0.73 acre site, number 7, relatively tiny. North of that is the Morgan Knolls property that was rezoned to residential, 9 acres. And you've got the large sites in the vineyard specific plan. And then the 3.9 acre self-storage facility, which I wouldn't consider a retail use, but it is an allowed use in the commercial zone. That's 3.9 acres. That's parcel number 8. So this zoning has probably been in place besides the specific plan areas since the plan was adopted in 1990. I can't think of any commercial projects that have been proposed for any of them. So that speaks volumes to the viability of retail here, at least up to now. So we do have a rezoning proposal for this parcel. It was bought as a residential zone, so it was speculative. It's up to the community and the decision makers to decide whether it's an appropriate use for the site, and all the potential impacts have been mitigated.
Christopher, Riego Market is in Placer County, and it is zoned commercial with gas station availability because it was one at one time. Is it still zoned that way?
It's neighborhood commercial, so I believe gas stations would be allowed. I don't think there's a gas station out there today.
No, there used to be. There's not.
May have been
Chris, and to my colleague, pardon my interruption, but that is not Placer County. That is Sutter County.
Riego Market.
And you're right. You are correct that the line is right there. EJ will validate what I'm saying because we dealt with this issue about 21 years ago. And it's the other side of the street that also that comes around and encompasses that. So actually, you're looking at an apex. EJ, feel free to jump in. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about that's the confluence of Sac County, Sutter County, and Placer County, right at that very spot. And you talk about the tanks that were leaking. Guess why there's no tanks anymore there? Guess.
I understand. I'm well aware of that market. I drove past it for 14 years, almost every day.
We will confirm where that county line is. Just give us 1 minute.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I meant no disrespect to my colleague, and I apologize for interrupting, but I thought it was a point that we needed to consider in the whole analysis. With all due respect.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I answered Supervisor or Commissioner Hauge's question about conversion of commercial sites. So we have one that's been approved, has been converted to residential, a second one pending.
Chris, how many acres is that trade-off? I mean, we're looking at a 7-acre parcel here versus how many have been converted to residential? Because you're really talking shifting land uses in recognition of those commercial parcels being converted to residential.
So the northeast corner of Willerga and PFE is 8.9 acres. That's the Morgan Knolls subdivision. And then site number 3 is 5 acres. That's the Frisvold subdivision that we're looking at currently under review. That's within the Riolo Vineyard specific plan area.
So approximately 14 acres.
14 acres, correct.
Thank you. Based on one of the comments, Chris and EJ, it's my understanding that neighborhood commercial does allow gas stations. I know some of the made comments that neighborhood commercial does not include gas stations, but my experience is gas stations are included in neighborhood commercial.
So the neighborhood commercial zone district for the county does allow service stations and fast food restaurants. The zoning proposed for the site is commercial plan development, which also allows the same.
Mr. Chair, may I offer another comment? And I promise to shut up here shortly.
Yeah.
What I don't want to see is it feels like we're talking about potential disenfranchisement of all of those that live on that side of the county. And that is Supervisor Gore, who appointed me in District 1. So again, all due respect to my colleagues and everyone else whom has spoken here today, and I realize it's a controversial issue, but the risk-benefit analysis has not been properly laid out. And what we will do on the disenfranchisement is all of those, it's projected to be, Mr. Johnson can speak to that, but we've closed that part. But I believe, because I was on that first committee 21 years ago, that we're talking about 30,000 people that are impacted in that West and Sierra plans, those two. So, not to mention all the people that come through on the egress there on Baseline, Riego and Sutter, Baseline, and then later Main and the city. So let's get back on track and look at that, because those are folks that moved to those two West plans with the expectation, and I believe it's in their title documents, that all of these things were planned. However, we're talking like a nickel and a dime here. We're just talking right across the street is the city, and right across the street is the county. So we have not addressed the fiscal impacts from the tax implications and ramifications that we're going to, to be able to realize from what's going to happen in that development. Mm-hmm. So I'm not speaking as just entirely as a pro-Roseville, advocate. Of course, I live in the city and have always lived in District 1 in all of my various houses that I've had in Roseville, which is 3 in the 21 years. But we have to look at that constituency and think about them as Placer County residents and Roseville City residents, and how we can both work. This is the thing, like I said, it's a memorialization of a kind of agreement that I've never seen between the city and the county. And there were several supervisors before current Supervisor District 1, Bonnie Gore, that worked very earnestly and hard to try and restore relations between the two entities, City of Roseville and the County of Placer. That's what we're doing. That's why I said that the last 4 mayors are supportive of, bringing the services that we promised to these folks. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm done, and I will try not to speak again unless somebody makes me outraged again.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
I want to make a couple of comments. I think, we understand the big picture need. I really value the MAC, I really do value the MAC. And, I'm just wondering why the MAC would have no one in the MAC would have voted for this. That's part of the confusion for me. If it is so needed, if the broader community identifies that, then what is it that not one person in the MAC voted for this? I'm really wrestling with that, and I find somewhat of an issue. And we have some options, right? We've got some options as a commission with a motion, which we've exercised before. It doesn't have to be yes or no, but I'm a little conflicted with the MAC all no.
Mr. Chair, if with all due respect, may I respond to that? Here's one of the panoply of different issues that are involved with the municipal advisory committees in the county. EJ will, again, the planning director, will speak to 21 years ago when I worked on the issue of putting that stupid stop sign on Locust and Baseline. So you have a confluence of 4 stop signs. So guess what that did for all the missions. And the MAC all voted for that, and former Supervisor Santucci did as well. But later, they realized, and I believe it was two of my colleagues here on the commission today that spoke about what happens when you do those kinds of foolish things. And Placer County Public Works Director and everyone else, and EJ will speak to it, he was in the meeting with me, they disagreed with the supervisor, but the supervisor went along with what the folks in the MAC wanted to have happen. So when you talk about nobody supported the project, Mr. Chair, I think that's, of course, it speaks to those folks that live in those communities, and I don't mean to disrespect them, but we have to look at the larger picture, and guess what happened on that stop sign on Locust? Exactly what I said would happen 21 years ago, and all the traffic moved around the different ways, and the county ended up having to block off the roadways because they were all doing cut-throughs to get there. I mean, so that is what I'm talking about. The MAC has their issues, and of course, with all respect, I mean, they're representing their own county interests. But we're also talking about, the Roseville population and the south part of Placer, and we're talking about the tax base, revenue-wise. We're talking about transportational improvements. We're talking about private property rights. All of these things, I think, mitigate on behalf of, well, clearly where I was going to go with this, on behalf of a recommendation, in full support. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and now I promise I'll be quiet.
I guess I will.
Commissioners?
Yeah,
Like you just did.
I have a comment. Oh.
I was just going to address a couple of things that were brought up. One was the Riego store that is located in the county, right on the county line, Pleasant Grove Road. And then also the conversations about Locust Road and the stop sign and the MAC. I can validate that those were discussions and actions taken in the early to mid 2000s. Focused on the stop sign and the traffic along baseline.
Okay, I guess I'd like to address what we're talking about here. And we're talking the big picture, but at some point in time, we got to bring it down to what do we have going on here. And basically, the applicant has purchased a property and done a market analysis and came up with this plan. And basically, it's really up to them they're going to put the money in. And so it's, up to them to make a decision to go forward with this. As far as I can see, I think they have really made a strong effort to deal with the community issues as well as the transportation issues. I can appreciate the neighbors and people that are opposed to it because of the change and what they'd like to see happen with this property. But if anything's going to happen with this property, it has to meet some kind of a market analysis that has to be able to pay for itself. And so, that's kind of where I'm at with this thing. I can appreciate the concern, and we see it quite often, and a lot of the comments were good. But really, I think most of the issues have been addressed. And so at any rate, I'm thinking, well, this project probably should go forward.
Mr. Chair, so are we done with discussion? Is it time for a motion?
Yeah, we can entertain a motion.
Okay. Clayton, if you'll help me here. I'm going to try and, can I do this as all one and include points A through D on 1, 2, 3 and all the subpoints? Or do I need to specify each numerical number all the way through? What would that be, number 7, I guess?
So each of the numbers would need to be taken as a separate motion, but you don't need to go in the set subcategories of A through whatever with each number.
Thank you, Clayton. Mr. Chair, then, I'm going to make the recommendation based upon the review of the staff and us, the rest of us on the commission, and all of in concert with all of those with whom have spoken from Placer County and the consultants, that we, one, adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring program for the Baseline Commercial Center project as set forth in attachment H and supported by the following findings, A, B, C, and D.
And, just so the commission is aware, this is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, so the adoption wouldn't be occurring here. It would be a recommendation that they adopt it.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
First and a second, let's do roll call vote.
I have a first from Mr. Cannon, a second from, I believe it was Mr. Sevison. And so I'll have a vote from Mr. Cannon.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. DiMattei.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
No.
Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Mr. Sevison.
Yes.
And Mr. Hauge.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Sir, what is the confirmation of the vote total on that?
That's 5-2 in favor.
Okay. And then two, Mr. Chair, with all respect, I'd like to make the motion to adopt the resolution to amend the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan land use diagram as shown in attachment E on page 26 of this report, and set forth by the following subcomponents laid out below, which includes point A.
Second.
First and a second, roll call vote.
I have a first from Mr. Cannon, a second from Mr. Sevison, so a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. DiMattei.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
No.
Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Mr. Sevison.
Yes.
And Mr. Hauge.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if, with all due respect, I'd like to make the subsequent motion, which would be number 3, to adopt the ordinance to rezone the Baseline Commercial Center project site as shown in attachment F on page 26 of the staff report and supported by the findings set forth below, which includes subcomponent A.
And just to reiterate, this is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Correct, that's what I meant, the recommendation.
Second.
First and a second, roll call vote.
First from Mr. Cannon, a second from Mr. Sevison, so a vote from Mr. Cannon.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. DiMattei.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
No.
Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Mr. Sevison.
Yes.
And Mr. Hauge.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you, Sue. If I may, with all due respect, make my fourth motion, which is point 4, approval of the tentative parcel map to create the 7 parcels that are supported by the following findings, which are indicated under points A, B, C, D, and E in the staff report on pages 26 and 7.
And for this one, staff's recommendation that it is also pursuant to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
And it's my recommendation that I'm putting forward to the supervisors to make the ultimate decision, as Clayton spoke earlier.
He added some components to that statement than what.
Say again?
He added some items. I don't know if that's okay.
No, I just simply meant, Mr. Chair, that I was including subpoints A, B, C, D, and E under point 4, enumerated on pages 26 and 7.
Yes, I believe that was just a reference to the items contained in the staff report, and just clarifying that this map would be subject to the conditions of approval that are contained within the staff report as attachment G.
And that's correct. That's exactly what I meant.
And could the author of the motion consider changing the conditions to change the hours of those noisy activities from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning, and also change the number of pumps to 6 pumps, I believe 12 hoses.
I mean, if that's going to be a point of objection with the rest of my colleagues here, sure, I'll amend to say exactly that, but I think we're putting a hindrance upon the development, and we're risking the private property rights if we would do such a restriction, pardon me. So I'll send it back to my colleagues if that's what they want, then I'll amend my motion to say those things.
Can you restate your motion, please, Commissioner Cannon?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chair. Approve the conditional use permit, point 5, enumerated on page 27 of the staff report to allow for the development of a retail shopping center supported by the following findings: A, B, C, D, E.
If I could, Commissioner Cannon, your first motion was for the number 4 approval of the tentative parcel map.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I think you're jumping ahead to the conditional use permit.
Yeah, my apologies, colleagues and staff. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. Let me go back to point 4. I'm getting all excited about this project. Okay, point 4, I'll restate it, Mr. Chair. Approve the tentative parcel map to create 7 parcels supported by the following findings, and that's enumerated on page 26 and page 27, and the subcomponents include A, B, C, D, and E, and it's a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for their determination and action.
And Commissioner Hauge, were you asking for an amendment to that with the timing?
This is a tentative map.
That is, I was looking at it, addition to the conditions of approval to limit the timing of noise activities from 7 in the morning till 10 at night, and also to limit the number of gas pumps.
Should be with the conditional use.
So we good?
So the way this works is Commissioner Cannon has made a motion. Commissioner Hauge has made a recommendation to amend that motion. Ultimately, Commissioner Cannon's motion is the one before the commission right now. So unless he changes it or elects to change it, you're voting on Commissioner Cannon's motion.
Yeah. So Commissioner Cannon's motion does not include the amendment that Commissioner Hauge has suggested.
No, it does not. But I mean, let's go back to Commissioner and my colleagues' conversation, and we can discuss that and why that 1 hour is that critical. It makes a difference.
Let me see, this motion that you just made is for the tentative map? Is that correct?
Correct. It's number 4.
Okay, well, the next motion is a conditional use permit, which.
Yeah,
seems
and
like
that's
more
the one that I
appropriate
missed. To my commissioner colleague, no disrespect, I meant that as our county council just said, I jumped the gun and I went to 5, and while we were still talking about 4.
Just so the commission is aware, both the map and the conditional use permit will be subject to the conditions of approval. So if there is an interest in modifying a condition of approval, it would be both for the motion on the map and the conditional use permit.
Okay, that's a good clarification. I appreciate it.
So Clayton, could you explain that a little bit further? So are we talking, we're combining point 4 and point 5?
We don't have.
No, we are not combining them, but both point 4 and point 5, staff is recommending that those be subject to the conditions of approval. So if there is an interest in modifying a condition of approval, the modification would occur both under 4 and 5.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification, Council.
Just one question. So if these two are approved, can we subsequently amend them through another motion?
No. So the motion would be, the motion as it stands right now, which the commission must vote on, is the map itself subject to the conditions of approval without modification. So,
okay,
and if that gets approved, then that means it's set according to that.
Okay, so if we, as a group, wished to amend it, if those who are voting for this routinely wished to amend it, then they should vote this down, and then a new motion should be submitted.
Exactly. If there is an interest in including those conditions, the path to do so would be to vote against the motion that's currently on the table, and then propose a new motion that would be subject to modification.
Okay.
But Mr. County Council, if I may opine, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is merely a recommendation and the board will ultimately decide.
That is 100% accurate. Yes, this is a recommendation to the board that will make the ultimate call.
Okay, on this motion, maybe I didn't hear it, but we don't have a second yet, do we?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, then, and Mr. County Council, are we then determining now that there is not a second, so therefore we need to amend a motion?
Yes, we cannot vote yet. We do not have a second.
Yes, if there is no second, then the motion would fail. So then it's up to the commission to bring forward another motion.
Okay, and so timing-wise, what are we talking about?
You want me to jump in?
Huh?
So conditions 114 through 118 are related to noise and operations. Everything, the car wash, the vacuum machines, and outdoor speakers have to be turned off between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. 117 and 118 have different hours. We allow truck deliveries starting at 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. and parking lot sweeping from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The applicant is open to changing those to match everything 7 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Thank you, Chris, and Mr. Chair, if I may opine and ask Mr. County Council to help here. I believe where there's the United States Interstate Transportation Commerce Clause that would be unduly federally impacting business operations that would supersede this. So therefore, the point is moot.
So for these conditions and the timing, this is a discretionary approval with the county. So the county can agree to approve the map and the conditional use permit subject to whatever conditions it elects to impose on the property owner.
There was also a discussion about limiting deliveries on weekends, so that's for consideration. And then condition of approval number 1 talks about the 16 pumps. The applicant is agreeable to reducing that, and just to clarify, it would be 6 pumps and 12 nozzles to reduce all confusion, so that's a 25% reduction. So the change conditions are potentially condition number 1 and conditions 117 and 118.
But Mr. County Council, may I interject? Can we reverse and go back? Because that was a previous motion that we already passed.
So there has not been a motion yet dealing with the conditions of approval. If the commission is interested in modifying the conditions of approval, as Commissioner Hauge had stated, the method would be, as Chris had noted, which would be to modify the condition of approval number 1 to change it from a 16-pump gas station to a 12-pump, 1-nozzle gas station. And then to modify conditions of approval 117 and 118 to make both of those the hour start times to be 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m.
Well, Mr. County Council and Mr. Chair, I'm okay with making those minor clarifications if it helps my colleagues in motion, and I apologize if I was so forthright in trying to move the motion through, but I'll amend it if that's what my colleagues would like.
So in terms of procedural status right now, we have a motion that made by Commissioner Cannon that did not have a second, so that one has now failed. So it is open for a new motion by any commissioner.
Then I'll make this, if with all due respect again, Mr. Chair and Mr. County Council, I'll make the same motion contingent upon all of my colleagues, including Commissioner, the chair, who's not acting chair today, he's actually the chair, Mr. Hauge. So I'll include all of his extra provisions.
I'll second.
So what did you just say? You said all
well,
approve?
I basically just said that I would agree with Commissioner Hauge's, rather Chair Hauge's suggestions upon the hours of restriction and operation. Mr. County Council,
can you help me? Also?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it includes what all of our, our working colleagues together on the board would like. So I'm.
Okay, is that your motion that you're making?
That is. It was included all chair.
And just so I could make sure it's abundantly clear what we have for a motion. This is a motion to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to adopt a tentative parcel map to create 7 parcels supported by the findings contained in the staff report, and subject to the conditions of approval as modified, including modifications to condition of approval number 1, to change it from a 16-pump gas station to a 12-pump, 1-nozzle gas station, and to modify condition of approval number 117 and 118 to change the hours from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m.
That is correct, Mr. County Council, so moved. Thank you, colleagues.
That's not the right numbers. I'm sorry. So condition of approval 1 would go from 16-pump gas station to a 6-pump, 12-nozzle gas station.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
So we have a first and a second.
Do we have a second?
We do. Commissioner Hauge seconded that. So let's take a roll call vote.
Okay, confirming that we have a first from Mr. Cannon, a second from Mr. Hauge, so a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. DiMattei.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
I appreciate the changes, but no.
Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Mr. Sevison.
Yes.
And Mr. Hauge.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move to the next item, which is, or rather, next motion, which is to approve item 5 enumerated on page 27 of the staff report, which is to approve the conditional use permit to allow for the development of the retail shopping center supported by the following findings, which include A, B, C, D. Well, that's a typo there. E and F it should be. It says 2 Ds.
This is also...
Would this motion also be subject to the modified conditions of approval as stated in the prior motion?
Absolutely. I concur with the majority of my colleagues on that.
Second.
I'm sorry, that was muffled. Commissioner Hauge, was that a second?
I think Larry beat me to it.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Sevison.
Just maybe one question. On the screen that we're dealing with, they're talking about the CPD zoning district. Yeah, and number 5. And so I think I didn't hear that mentioned, so I just was making sure that's part of what number 5 is.
County Council, Mr. County Council, isn't that inclusive?
Commissioner Johnson, I don't know if I'm 100% sure what your ask is. Could you restate?
Well, see, on the screen here, they're talking about a CPD zoning district.
Oh.
But in the motion, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he's reading something.
Yes, so he's reading from the recommendations that are contained within the staff report. The ones that are on your screen are, I guess, a shorthanded version of what's contained in the staff report.
Okay.
And for the record, Mr. County Council, please note that there is a typographical error on the subcomponents with 2 Ds there when it should be A, B, C, D, E, and F.
We got that. So we got a first and a second. Let's do a roll call vote.
I have a first from Mr. Cannon, a second from Mr. Sevison, so a vote from Mr. Cannon.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
No.
Mr. Herzog.
Yes.
Mr. Sevison.
Yes.
Mr. Hauge.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move to the next, and with the County Council's approval, I would like to make the following motion, including item number 6 on page 27 of our planning staff report, which is to approve the minor boundary line adjustment to combine 0.8 acres of APN number 023-221-020-000 with the 6-acre APN 023-221-021-000 to create the 6-acre project site as supported by the following findings, which include, again, enumerated on page 27 and 28. So we have A, B, C, and D.
I know this is understood, but I just want to make a note on the record that this is a recommendation of the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
Again, yes, thank you, Mr. County Council. So yes, a recommendation of the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Let's do a roll call vote.
I have a first from Mr. Cannon, a second from Mr. Sevison, so a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. DiMattei?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
No.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that,
And just so everyone is aware, this is a recommendation of the Board of Supervisors, so therefore there's no appeal
No
rights
appeal,
based on this action. There will be appeal rights based on the Board of Supervisors action if so interested.
okay, that concludes our timed items and the rest of the agenda items, and go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.